Cody went ahead and I followed right behind, straining my eyes to look ahead in the direction he pointed. Oh my god, I think he was right. A treehouse. And that was a big one. But it looked very old. We had to go far away from our home, to the edge of the forest to finally find this treehouse because it is also hidden by many bushes and ancient trees.
See, I told you this paper was a treasure map.
I've never seen Cody so excited. So about a week ago, his dog disappeared for several days in a row. Fortunately, until the 5th day of missing, it eventually came home with a piece of paper with strange markings on it. Cody insisted it was a treasure map, and it took us a week to get our parents' permission to start our adventure.
Now comes the hardest part. Who's gonna do it? Zoe, what does it look like?
Oh, how should I describe it?
Spiderwebs clung to the faraway ceiling, drifting in the weak breeze. There were no toys, no tents, and no fluffy pillows of all kinds.
I don't think you'd like it up here.
I hollered to Cody, and I noticed jam pouring everywhere over the mattress and on the floor. It seemed that Cody and I weren't the first ones to discover it. You know what's even more weird? In the middle of the house were clothes and all kinds of stuff. And I could see a part of the large cage hidden behind the mess. I sighed. And just imagining Cody's reaction when seeing this could make me frustrated. He must be very disappointed. At that moment, I heard Cody whispering my name, as if he was afraid anyone would overhear us.
Zoe, we have to go. Well, look who I found.
Before I could react, I heard a man's voice coming from below. Is he the owner of this treehouse? God, if that's true, then Cody and I got in big trouble. While I didn't know what to do, I heard Cody reply,
My dad's a cop. He's on his way back.
That's my friend Cody, the smartest friend that I've had. But that man seemed not to be convinced because I heard him saying,
Oh, is that so? Because if I find out you're lying, I'll split your throat.
As soon as I heard this, I started to panic. It's easy for Cody to get out of this situation. He's right below and he can run away at any moment. But I have no way to escape. He's gonna find me as long as he comes up here. I was in a complete state of panic. While my body went cold with dread, I backed away to the corner of the room. Just then, I realized I'd made my way through the mess and my back touched the cage. That's when I thought, it's not just me in the treehouse. I slowly turned around, and the next second, my whole body froze. There was a monster in the cage. I've never witnessed such horrible scenes in my life. It seemed that my scream had awakened the monster, which slowly raised its face, revealing its bony face and bloodshot eyes.
Zoe, get out of there! Now!
Cody's call brought me back to reality. I shivered out of that hellish corner. The monster was still staring at me with wide eyes, its hand even reaching out as if it wanted to attack me. I decided to climb down despite what was waiting for me down there. Oh my god! The man had a very scary face. His eyes were red and full of anger.
You lying kids! Prepare yourself to die!
His rage exploded as soon as he saw me, but there was nothing he could do because Cody was using his whole body to stop that maniac.
Run! Zoe! Just run! To tell my parents! They're gonna know what to do!
What about you?
I can hold him. Just hurry up and come back.
That's right. That's the only way. Following Cody's instruction, I ran and ran and ran. I didn't look back until I was out of the woods. Took me more than 10 years to come back to this treehouse. I know Cody is gone, but somehow I feel like he's still staying around.
Bayside High School prom was one of the most anticipated events of the year. 1 hour or two before the party got started, there were already a long line of boys and girls in splendid costumes in the hall. Stella, arm in arm with Julian, among that line, was about to enter the dancing hall. But suddenly, Stella felt something wrong with her stomach, so she had to go to the bathroom immediately. It took her more than 30 minutes to get better. Angrily cursing the lentil stews, Stella fixed her clothes and got out. After she closed the bathroom door, she noticed that it was oddly quiet for a party.
Is the prom over?
When Stella turned around, she was startled by a clown standing at the end of the hallway. He stood still like a statue. Maybe that was just a mascot the school hired for the party. But when she was about to move, the clown suddenly turned around. Stella realized there was a chainsaw in his hand. He stood still like a statue. Stella quickly ran away. At that point, Stella was extremely panicked. She didn't know what to do but just keep running in vain. Stella ran through a few turns, thinking she had escaped, but she was wrong. Another clown was standing right there. He raised his saw overhead. Luckily, Stella dodged. She kept running away. After a while, she managed to hide in a classroom. Just then, another clown appeared in the deep hallway, holding a bat in his hand. He dragged the bat against the wall while walking. The creaky sound made Stella tremble in fear. She bit her lip to stop herself from crying. The clown was standing at the door, right in front of the room where Stella was hiding. He stood there for a few minutes, then left. Stella was still in shock. She didn't know what was going on, nor why they were chasing her. She called Julian 100 times, but he didn't pick up the phone. Stella tried to keep calm and dialed 911.
Please help! There's a bunch of clowns in the school and they want to kill me!
The operator's voice did calm her down a bit. They said the police would arrive immediately, and until that, she had to stay right in the same spot. But the clowns could come at any moment.
I think I should go out and check.
No, Stella, don't.
The dispatcher said. Sure enough, Stella had just stepped out when a clown appeared. The guy aggressively opened the door, but there was no one inside. Stella was scared, her heart pounding like it was going to explode. She ran down the hallway to find the exit. The exit door was locked.
They locked the door!
She cried in panic.
The school is locked down!
She was too disturbed to hear the operator's words clearly. Now the only thing she thought about was to hide from the clowns. She rushed to the hall. It was just a few steps away. Stella could hear the clown's footsteps echoing throughout the corridor. She wiped her tears and pushed open the door, but the scene inside left her petrified. Blood was everywhere, on the walls and the disco balls, on ragged banners and the gorgeous dresses. Bodies were strewn in the cold room. Stella stepped inside. There were no survivors. All her friends were lying motionless on the floor.
Stella? What's wrong?
The operator's voice woke Stella up.
They are all dead.
Stella's voice choked. Her whole body was shaking, and her legs were stuck to the ground. She was so shocked that she couldn't move.
Stella, please make sure you're in a safe place, okay?
Yes.
Stella locked the door, frantically looking for a place to hide while she waited for the police to arrive. However, what Stella expected least was right behind her. She heard the sound of the chainsaw again. When Stella turned around, the last thing she saw was 3 identical clowns. And she, all by herself, in this room full of corpses.
Stella! After more than 30 minutes, police finally arrived at Bayside High School. The assailants were arrested while fleeing the scene. Regrettably, more than 30 students have all...
My best friend Lisa was a wonderful person. This horror story I'm gonna tell you didn't happen to me. It happened to her. Unlike me and our friends back then, Lisa had no financial support, so she had to help herself. She had to do all sorts of part-time jobs to pay the bills. This was starting to interfere with her education and her social life as well. This really wasn't working out for her, so she started looking for smaller sort of side hustles online. I didn't know much about the website aside from the fact that it was known for adult content and pretty much every Instagram girl had one in their bio. Lisa bragged to me that she could make hundreds of dollars just by taking pictures. Men were thirsty enough to just drop money on a picture of her feet or a picture of her crying. Of course, from time to time, she also gets some weird requests from customers, some asking her to hold a hair clipper or demanding her to cry while tearing her fishnet tights. Out of curiosity, I registered an account, recharged to follow Lisa's account. I was really shocked. I warned her that it was a bad idea. Lisa was blown away by the easy money that my words no longer mattered. Some weeks later, I noticed something was off. Lisa was absent from her class, more frequently than ever. More strangely, Monday was always a fixed date for us to meet for lunch at the school canteen, but Lisa didn't even show up. I called her a few times, but got no response. At the end of the day, I decided to contact her parents' house, but they said they couldn't reach her either. When I checked my phone, I found out that she hadn't even been online since 2 days ago. Having a bad feeling, I called the police and reported Lisa as a missing person. The police finally got a warrant to search through her apartment, but when they looked through there, they saw no traces of any violence or that anything could have happened. A week, a month, and a half a year have passed. The police still have no clue. No one knows whether Lisa was alive or dead. Her parents are devastated, so am I. But I still pray for Lisa every day. And I believe she is in a much better place in the real world. A year has passed. It's not until now that I can finally let out a sigh of relief. It was a genius plan. I left her body in the basement of an abandoned farmhouse about 100 miles from the city. It's her fault. I couldn't bear the thought of her exposing her flesh and skin to such strangers. Not me. If Lisa hadn't been so stubborn, if she just deleted the damn account, things might have been different.
want to tell you a story about my last working day as a teacher. A horrible day that gives me goosebumps every time I think about it. It was 11 in the morning. I was teaching literature in the class. The students were sitting lazily. They didn't seem to listen at all. I got out of class and went to the bathroom. While I was washing my face after a long morning, suddenly the loudspeaker sounded.
Attention! There is a maniac with weapons in the school. Everyone, stay in your classroom, lock the door, and do not come out until getting further notice.
As soon as the bell rang, I rushed back to the classroom and locked the door.
Oh, dear. Did you all hear the announcement? No one is allowed to leave the classroom.
But Lizzie exclaimed,
Miss, I want to go to the bathroom.
Oh, no. Not now, honey. Can you hold on for a while?
But I don't think I can hold it any longer.
Lizzie pouted.
Okay, let me think. Oh, all right now. You'll run as fast as you can to the bathroom. And after you've done, come back. Knock on the door 3 times. 1 long and 2 short. Like a code. Understand?
Lizzie said with an annoyed face.
Yes, I'll do as you said. Can I go now?
Okay, be careful.
I unlocked the door for Lizzie to get out. While we were waiting, other students started whispering and making jokes.
I've seen it in the movies. Maybe they're just pretend, like a rehearsal, you know? No fool would run into the school.
I told all of them
Students, this is no joke!
and showed them the message from the principal. Suddenly, the atmosphere became quiet. 10 minutes passed, and I started to worry. Suddenly, the fire alarm went off.
Oh, why has Lizzie not come back?
Suddenly, there was someone knocking on the door 3 times, exactly the code I told Lizzie. I was about to open the door.
But teacher, what if it's not Lizzie?
It was Dave, the class monitor.
Are you sure it's Lizzie?
What are you talking about? Only Lizzie knows the code.
Actually, I was afraid it wasn't Lizzie too.
If it were someone else, we might be killed.
But if it's the real Lizzie, we can't just leave her out there. But just to be sure, maybe.
And then I turned toward the classroom door and whispered.
Oh, Lizzie, can you raise your hand up to the classroom window so that we can be sure?
Immediately, I saw a raised hand, and it was Lizzie's. I saw her pink-polished nails, so I unlocked the door. But that was not Lizzie, or at least it was not Lizzie who knocked because she was now a corpse in a man's arms. Hello, teacher. I'm Lizzie. The man imitated Lizzie's voice. All the students screamed. My whole body froze. The psycho then dropped the body on the ground and said, "Teacher, I'm back," and thrust the knife at me. I fell on the ground while my students shouted louder. Just when he was about to pick up the knife and stab me in the face, I raised my hand to stop him. The knife went through my hand. Blood splashed on my face. The madman took the knife out of my hand and Dave jumped out, grabbing the chair and hitting the madman on the head. He fell over but immediately got up.
How dare you, little brat!
He lunged at Dave, stabbing him in the shoulder with the knife.
Let me go!
I was in so much pain that I couldn't stand up to help my students. All the others were too frightened. They huddled in a corner and did not dare to protest. But when looking out the window, I suddenly had a crazy idea.
The classroom is on the 2nd floor. Maybe jumping down from here won't kill me. Then I could go to the police to rescue my students.
So while the psycho was being held by Dave, I tried to move towards the classroom window, and after an inhale, I jumped down. But before I could do anything else, I fainted from the excessive blood loss from the wound on my arm. I woke up in the emergency room. The police reassured me that the other students were safe. The police arrived after that and soon controlled the psycho, but they could not save Dave. What a bad teacher I am. If I hadn't let Lizzie go to the bathroom, things would have been different. If you were me in that situation, what would you have done?
This morning, the body of the mayor's son was found brutally murdered at the Burger King. The killer's identity has not yet been determined. The mayor vowed to make the murderer pay for his crime.
Kyle worked the day shift at a Burger King drive-thru outside the town, and his girlfriend worked the night shift. As usual, Kalia arrived a little early to help her boyfriend clean things up. When Kalia came back after throwing the trash, she saw two shadows appearing behind Kyle. From the dim light inside the counter, she knew it was her ex, Jordan, and his friend. They were both holding weapons, slowly approaching without Kyle even knowing. On the contrary, when Kyle realized his girl was heading toward him, he smiled and waved at her.
Watch out!
Kalia waved in panic to sign Kyle as the men were approaching him, but he assumed that it was just a simple wave. Kyle got choked and fell to the ground. Kalia was scared to death. She ran to the counter hurriedly and frantically. The closer she was, the more terrified she got. Jordan repeatedly hit the hammer on Kyle's body. The sound of the hammer mixing with his cry broke the stillness.
You bastard! How dare you steal my Kalia? You have to pay for this!
He shouted. The friend couldn't even see this, but Kalia had seen it all from the outside. Her eyes were wide open, tears were falling, but her whole body was stiff, too scared to move. Jordan's friend saw her, immediately rushed to the window.
Get her!
Jordan shouted. She was caught and tied to a chair. The friend held her head and kept her eyes open. They made her see everything. They cut Kyle's flesh into small pieces and threw all of them into the blender.
No! Please!
Kalia desperately cried and screamed. Then after a while, she got panicked and passed out in the laughter of Jordan and his friend. Kalia woke up from the nightmare. She was choked in the pain caused by the horrifying memory. Her heart was broken when she knew Jordan wasn't brought into account after murdering Kyle because his father was the mayor. Pain and resentment turned into hatred, and Kalia decided to avenge Kyle. After coming back from the hospital, Kalia locked herself in to learn how to access the dark web from a friend. She wanted to find a supporter for her plan. Her whole body trembled when she saw a video titled "Meat for the Kings" appeared on the screen, showing Jordan eating Kyle's meat in a bun. Her heart broke into pieces once again. She has to kill that monster. Then she finally found someone to help. It was a site named Vengeance Spirits. When Jordan was at the gas station next to the Burger King, he was drugged and taken away by a man wearing a black hoodie and mask. Jordan slowly revived from consciousness, found out he was strapped to a chair inside the Burger King drive-thru where he tortured Kyle. His friend was strangled to death, eyes bulging, mouth gaping. Jordan still had no idea what was going on. He frantically tried to untie the rope. Kalia stepped out from the darkness. Behind her was a man dressed in black with a mask. In Kalia's hand was a sharp knife.
You!
He started to panic when he saw her. Jordan screamed in pain as the masked man slammed the hammer down his leg. Then Kalia repeated what Jordan did to Kyle, giving him exactly 23 hammer blows to his stomach, chest, and head, then using a knife to cut a piece of meat on his thigh. Jordan screamed, tears streaming down his face. Too much pain to say a word. Kalia brought the bun containing the thigh meat and stuffed it into his throat.
Meat for the kings.
Kalia laughed creepily. Jordan's mouth was stuffed with the burger, and there was only a faint humming from his throat. The whole process was filmed by the masked man, as Kalia requested.
After the investigation, police found human flesh inside the victim's stomach. It seems like the poor man was forced to eat his own flesh, and the murderer's identity probably will never be found.
In front of the TV, Kalia laughed like crazy. She took a bite from the burger with red meat.
Yuck.
She spat it out and threw the burger to the ground.
I had been close friends for a long time. We shared a lot of things in common, especially hanging out and eating. Until one day, we both agreed that we needed to lose weight for a healthy and perfect body shape. After a while searching, Kira and I discovered a yoga studio commercial that promised to help yoga practitioners get slimmer and stay in shape. That seemed to fit our demand at that time. So we enrolled for both. The yoga teacher, John, was a 30-year-old good-looking man with a toned body.
Yoga can do everything.
Indeed, he was right. After a period of practice, we could feel the change so obviously. Fitter, slimmer, and much more confident. Since I thought a course was enough for me, I decided to quit, but Kira didn't. She grew a big interest with this place. She wanted more challenging yoga poses and often stayed late to practice with Master John. Gradually, I could see her body become very sexy in tight training clothes. She often uploaded yoga poses on Instagram. Lately, Kira had been busy with her yoga classes, so we didn't see each other as often as before, and she couldn't even arrange time for a meal with me. One night, Kira video called to tell me that she was trying the Yoganadhrasana, aka yogic sleep pose.
It's a really, really difficult yoga pose,
Kira said. But I noticed that she looked so different. Something seemed to be wrong. Her eyes were sunken as if she hadn't slept for days. She looked emaciated with many bruises all over her body.
It was yoga.
Mr. John must have forced her to practice a lot for this yogic freaking sleep pose. Then I found out that John asked Kira to practice every day, even though she showed signs of overworking.
Like, he's obsessed with it.
Kira sighed.
If you're too tired, you should take a break from yoga for a while,
I told her.
I can't. I poured a ton of money on it.
But she seemed to give away more than just money. All was for a desirable body, and I could completely understand that. After that, I did not see Kira nor hear from her for a week.
She must be practicing with Mr. John.
I thought.
But she could at least update something on Instagram.
I checked her account and didn't see any new posts other than a photo taken at the yoga studio with John. Another week had passed, and she hadn't even texted or answered my phone. Perhaps she was so obsessed with yoga. So one day, I decided to go to John's yoga studio. I pushed the door open. At this time, the studio had quite a lot of practitioners. I looked around, but I could not see my friend anywhere.
Here you are, sweetie. Want to start over?
It was John.
I'm looking for Kira. She didn't reply to my messages.
After a brief silence, he replied,
Kira is doing yoga in her private room. Do you want to have a look?
I said yes. I was so curious about Kira's training and how much she had progressed in the last few weeks. John took me to a separate room behind the studio outside. He opened the door and I stepped in first. Suddenly, I felt a hand from behind. It covered my mouth with a towel that smelled so strange. After a few seconds, everything slowly faded away. When I woke up, I found myself lying in the middle of a very dark room. There was a horrible smell. As I was trying to get up, I tripped over something and fell forward. The small light hanging in the ceiling suddenly turned on. I blinked several times due to the dazzling light, and when my eyes got to normal, the scene I saw made me scream for fear. It was Kira, but her limbs were twitching and contorting in a weird way. I realized it was the yogic sleep pose, the super hard yoga pose she always told me about. But her whole body was cyanotic and gave off a decaying smell of corpses. I threw up all my breakfast. Suddenly, the door behind me opened. John came in with a baseball bat in his hand and gave me a weird smile.
Have you seen my work? Do you want to achieve what your bestie did? I can help you.
I was panic-stricken. I didn't know what to do, but backed away until I hit the wall. Master John approached me, step by step.
Let me help you have a nice body shape.
I woke up to find my limbs were stuck. I couldn't move. My whole body was in pain as if my bones were broken into hundreds of pieces. I couldn't breathe. With a mouth filled with cloth, I could only cry in despair. And my ex-teacher, John, was standing there taking a burst of photos.
Such a nice pose. Very nice.
I work part-time in a local pizza shop as a delivery guy. It was Saturday night. My colleague had an unexpected break, so my boss asked me to cover his shift. Around 11 p.m., I got an order to the house on the side of the forest. This place is literally out of nowhere. It doesn't even show up on GPS. Well, it took me 45 minutes to get there. It was a rustic wooden house. Dang it! I took the pizza to the porch and rang the doorbell. I waited for a while, but no one appeared. So I rang the bell again. When I was about to call my boss to cancel the order, I heard footsteps in the house and the door opened. A well-dressed man stepped out. He just stood there, saying nothing, staring dead at me. Sorry for the late delivery. Anyway, here's your pizza. You don't need to tip me. He just stood for a moment, then flashed a weird smile. Okay, thanks for the pizza. Would you like to come in for the birthday party? I didn't want to come in and was about to refuse, but he continued. My daughter's party. Being bullied, no one came. Hey, if you feel uncomfortable, I totally get it. Poor this girl. I was in the same situation before, so I understood that feeling. I agreed to join the party. I followed the man into the kitchen. The house is so old that I can hear the wood floor creaking with every step. In the middle of the kitchen is a large dining table placed in the middle of the room. I was looking around. Suddenly a voice shouted from behind, startling me. Happy birthday! Seeing my cut face without a drop of blood, he seemed apologetic, joking. Sit here and wait. I'll go call her. 5 minutes, 10 minutes passed by. No one showed up. I walked around the dining to discover that there was a door in the corner of the kitchen. Being curious, I peered in. Oh my God. I saw someone in that 10 square meter room. Although I couldn't see his face clearly, I recognized the uniform. It was a pizza uniform, exactly like the one I was wearing. He was strapped to a chair and almost motionless. What's happening? I called out, "Hello? Are you okay?" At this moment, the man slowly raised his head. His mouth was glued. He made gurgling sounds. I froze. It was Jack, the colleague that was supposed to cover this shift. I noticed his pant leg was crushed. Blood from there was still dripping onto the floor. I have to help Jack. We have to get out of here right now. But then I passed out. When I woke up, it was already dawn. The rain outside has also stopped. Happy birthday music resounded throughout the room. In front of me was a lot of food. The man was chopping something on the cutting board. My body went numb. The pain ramped up. Jack. Where's Jack? Why did you do that to him? At this point, the man didn't move, but his head slowly turned back. He calmly smiled and said, "You did nothing wrong. I just have a different taste in food." This time, I felt the pain in my knee hurt, burning so bad.
It was at the end of March in 2021. The Friday Night Funkins game was storming everywhere, and they started to make this game into an arcade game. Since Hannah and I were fans, we knew we couldn't miss this opportunity. Are you sure they have Friday Night Funkins? Once the car was off the highway, I grumbled to Hannah. She seemed really excited.
We'll know soon. The place is in the middle of nowhere, so we won't have to queue.
This amusement arcade is so remote that I hardly found it on my GPS. Besides, the road was so difficult that it took us nearly an hour to get there. It was around 5 p.m. when we arrived. I was pretty disappointed as it was not an amusement arcade like I imagined. It's just like an old warehouse that has been poorly refurbished. I told Hannah to leave, but instead she insisted.
Come on, let's give it a try. At least we'll get free drinks.
Hannah pointed to the poster in front of the door and smiled happily. Then we got in. What? Are you kidding me? I cried out in displeasure. The whole room had only a few arcade machines. The finest place of the room is the dance area designated specifically for Friday Night Funkins. They're all brand new and look like they've never been used. At that moment, a man in his 40s, who appeared to be the owner of the store, came out to greet us. Hello, you are the first to visit us. You can drink as much free Coke as you want. Hannah was so thirsty at this point. She finished in one blink and then immediately started the Friday Night Funkins Dance Arcade. In terms of me, I didn't like this game as much as she did. If it weren't for the sake of pleasing Hannah, I wouldn't even be here. Anyway, I did not play games, nor drank the free Coke. I just stood there and watched her having fun. Hannah was so busy playing that she forgot the time. It wasn't until 10 p.m. that I managed to pull her out of that place. Are you getting even more obsessed? I dragged Hannah into the car and grumbled. She said nothing, but her face clearly showing irritation, anger, because I interrupted her gameplay. Due to busy exams, we couldn't go there for the next few days. I noticed that Hannah's face turned visibly pale. Therefore, as long as we finished the final exam, I took her there. This time, the shop owner still greeted us warmly and personally brought a tray of water for us. Just like last time, Hannah emptied one and climbed back onto the Friday Night Funkins machine.
Come on, don't just stand there like a statue.
Then, I took a small sip and joined Hannah. However, not long after that, I started to feel ill. Abdominal pain, nausea suddenly came from nowhere. I rushed to the bathroom. Half an hour later, the situation was still not getting any better. I forgot my phone outside, so I tried calling outside. But Hannah must be playing, so she couldn't hear me. I had no choice but to stay there for hours. Due to the pain, I fell asleep without realizing it. I woke up feeling dizzy and bitter in my mouth. It was already dark outside. God, I couldn't believe my eyes. Hannah, she's still dancing like crazy. Her footsteps didn't seem to be tiring, even though her whole body was drenched in sweat. Her face was strangely pale. There were many free bottles of water around, all of which were empty. Hannah, you're dancing for the whole time? I screamed, my stomach still aching. Instead, Hannah ignored me. When I was about to pay, I ran into the old shopkeeper who was carrying another tray of fresh water. As soon as he heard that I was going to leave, his face changed drastically. He just stood there watching and looking at me with anger. I remember begging my friend, Hannah, let's go home. The shop owner scared the hell out of me. But not only did Hannah listen to me, she became extremely unreasonable. She whirled around in my direction and yelled,
Don't you dare interrupt me again, you freaking psycho!
Then she pushed me hard and I fell to the ground. Book an Uber by yourself. That night, I left her there and went home alone. After that day, I could not contact Hannah. Neither could her family and friends. Having a bad feeling, I went back to that amusement arcade. Oh, it's only been a few days, and this place has already crowded up considerably. The Friday Night Funkins machine was full, and Hannah was nowhere to be seen. I sighed and went home. Weeks later, Hannah still didn't go to school. Her parents and the police went to look for Hannah, but strangely enough, the place seemed to have disappeared from the map. And just like that, my best friend disappeared. As time passed, I forgot about that event. Until yesterday, when I was surfing the dark web, I accidentally discovered some pictures posted by a hidden user. In the picture was an amusement arcade that was seemingly located in a remote place. Yet, it attracts unexpected visitors. My eyes fixed on the photo of the restaurant's poster. God, is that Hannah? My friend? I scrolled all the way down to the bottom and found a video attached.
Enjoying the spring fair is the annual tradition of me and Luna. So here I am, waiting for her at 3 p.m. to celebrate 2022. This year, my friend is wearing a crop top, short skirt, and pretty as usual. It was a gloomy day, but my mood lifted due to the bustling atmosphere. Luna dragged me to the Ferris wheel to take pictures. That's when I realized the difference of this fair compared to the previous ones. A Huggy Wuggy mascot was standing near the stuffed animal store. "Do you want a hug?" The mascot stretched out its hand towards us, but Luna scornfully replied, "This mascot is so freaking creepy. Afraid of being heard and judged?" As impolite, I interjected, "Well, but it's pretty cool, don't you think?" The Huggy Wuggy mascot is tall, probably a head taller than me. Its fur, though dirty, seems soft. However, its long red mouth, always smiling, gives me real shivers. "Don't you want a hug?" Suddenly, Luna pulled me towards the mascot for a check-in picture as she said, Then she kept dragging me to the other play areas. After walking a long way, I was pretty curious about the mascot, so I turned back to see it was still in the same position. But the head and eyes were deadly fixed on me and Luna, like it was watching us. Oh, come on, you need to stop watching something creepy on YouTube. Maybe Luna was right. I couldn't let that stupid mascot ruin our day. So that's what I did. I spent a happy evening with my best friend, and we also took a lot of photos. It was already dark when we were about to leave. It's already 7 o'clock. The fair was almost empty, and the stores were ready to pack up. As soon as we reached the gate, Luna suddenly stopped. "I need to go to the toilet." We drank too much Coke, so it was understandable. Okay, but hurry up, it's closing." Then Luna went back inside. I pulled out the pictures we took in the afternoon to kill time. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes passed and still no sign of my friend. I was impatient, so I called her number. The phone rang, but no one answered. Luna is someone who always carries her phone with her, so that worried me. You must be kidding me. Does she forget I was waiting for her at the gate? I called Luna a few more times, but still got no response, so I went back inside to look for her. At this time, only a few traders were packing to leave. There's only one toilet area in here, but Luna wasn't in it. I walked around a bit to look for it, but still, she was nowhere to be found. As my impatience began to flare, I discovered the Huggy Wuggy mascot was still in the same position, but instead, standing still, it was leaning against the store. "Hey, excuse me," I called out loudly, even though the mascot seemed to be heading straight for me. It still didn't move. "Excuse me, have you seen this girl?" I showed it the photo we took earlier, but all I received back is the dead silence. Is this just a costume? Thinking so, I gently pushed it, but as soon as I touched the Huggy Wuggy mascot, its whole body fell to the ground. Then I knew what real terror was. The head of the Huggy Wuggy fell off, rolling around. I couldn't believe it. Inside was no one else but the girl I was looking for. Even though her whole body was wrinkled, I still recognized Luna. Her eyes were rolled back and her neck was full of new deep marks, like she had been squeezed so hard until she died. No one knows what happened. I don't know. Neither do the police. The investigation hit a dead end. All they know is that the Poppy Playtime Company didn't invite that Huggy Wuggy mascot to the spring fair, and the picture I took of Luna. In that picture, the Huggy Wuggy was standing behind my friend. Although the head looked towards me, its eyes glanced straight to the left to look at Luna, and still showed a familiar smile.
While I was at the Disneyland entrance waiting for my shift, I saw Bruno, the coworker who just left from the previous shift. He showed me a trending video of Mickey Mouse. "It is said anyone who sees this video will be cursed," Bruno said. Why did people want to self-harm after watching it? I was pretty sure it was just a made-up story from Creepypasta. It was the message from the manager. He assigned me to clean up at Toontown, specifically Mickey's basement. I said goodbye to Bruno and headed straight to Mickey's house. My job was cleaning all of Mickey's basement, including 2 men's and women's restrooms, a small gym and break room. Since there was no one here, the place became creepier than usual. I started my night shift by cleaning the men's bathroom floor. Jesus, these footprints won't go away. I pushed it harder and harder. After a while, those footprints finally faded. It's strange, what were the children playing with to be so dirty? But when I looked closer, they appeared to be too large to be a child's footprint. I continued my shift and headed to the women's restroom. To make the work less boring, I was cleaning the house while humming a melody. A few minutes passed and suddenly I heard a strange noise. Looked like it came from the men's restroom. I stopped and listened carefully, but it fell silent again. Jesus, I must have gotten paranoid from watching that Mickey video. After that, I quickly moved my stuff to the gym to clean up, and I heard that strange sound, but this time, it came from the women's restroom, so I called out, "Hello? Is anyone here?" Strangely enough, the sound didn't stop, but became louder and louder. My heart beat faster with each step. As soon as I felt that person was about to burst into the room, the footsteps became quieter. What caught my eye was the toolbox in the middle of the floor. Oh, was the box here just now? While thinking, I pulled the crate towards the corner of the room. As I was at the door to take a look around, I suddenly felt a chill on my back. I turned, and immediately my whole body froze. Someone just passed me. From this angle, I could only see the back, but this person seemed to be wearing a Mickey mascot. Is it staff? I called out, Hey, who's that?" But that person still staggered forward. Could it be the front shift worker? I asked again, "Bruno, is that you?" This time I got a response. "Yeah, I forgot something," he said, as Mickey's shadow disappeared at the end of the corridor. About half an hour later, I finished cleaning the restroom and was ready to leave. When passing the men's restroom, I suddenly saw that the toolbox dragged to the middle of the room again. How strange. Bruno? You still here?" But no one answered. I looked at the time. It was 3 a.m., 2 more hours until the shift's end. I didn't want to be caught by camera, so I went to a room in the restroom to sleep a bit. Time passed by. As I was leaning on the toilet and dozing off to sleep, I suddenly heard a soft sound. The noise came from the next room. Jesus, I forgot to check the other rooms, I thought as I slowly bent to peer into the next room. Oh my god, there were feet. They're crazily big in size. While I was standing still, those feet slowly turned towards me. Something wet fell on my head. I looked up and froze. That was the head of Mickey's mascot. His eyes stared right straight at me. Gosh, you scared me to death. You still forget something? As soon as I stopped, the Mickey mascot made a high-pitched laugh.
I forgot this thing!
He said, and slowly raised a sharp knife, tinged with a bright red, like the color of blood. Suddenly, Mickey's head dropped. I rushed out of the bathroom and rushed to the door. God, the door was locked. I twisted like crazy, but couldn't open the door. With no other choice, I returned to the crate in the corner of the room. At this moment, suddenly the door from the next room opened, and a man in the Mickey suit stepped out, knife in his hand, walking slowly towards me. I have to hurry, I mumbled as I kept looking for something to open the door. Mickey was still laughing like crazy and rushed to me like lightning. Behind me was the wall, so I had nowhere else to hide. He slowly raised his knife and prepared to swing it down. Fortunately, if it weren't for the toolbox, I would probably have died at his hands. As soon as I saw the axe, I quickly grabbed it and rushed to the door. Once, twice, 3 times. Finally, the door opened. I closed it just as the madman got out. I quickly blocked the door with the axe and left that goddamn Mickey basement behind to run to the police station. When the police arrived, the room was all empty. No trace of the Mickey mascot was found at the scene, and strangely enough, they couldn't get in touch with Bruno or even the manager who assigned me to clean in this shift.
Ago, he worked as a security guard for the Mr. Funny toy shop. For your information, it's a factory where people can come by and buy Mr. Funny dummy merchandise. It was 10 p.m. Tiki lazily swung his flashlight around, examining the stalls and entrances. His colleague, Joido, had an unexpected break 3 days ago, so Tiki had to cover this night shift. This funny toy shop is huge, with 2 floors. Worse, it was dark everywhere because the shop owner, Mr. Earl, never allows his employees to turn on the power from 9 p.m. onwards. Tiki began to check the first floor, where there were many boxes of Mr. Funny dummy robots for sale. Oh my god, these toys are so creepy. Tiki got a shiver just by looking at these funny dummy robots. Suddenly, a loud noise startled Tiki. It seemed to come from the end of the row of stuffed animals. With a flashlight in his hand, Tiki slowly approached the place. He was so ready to confront an intruder. Yet there was no one except a funny dummy toy that had fallen to the ground. Tiki was relieved. He picked up the bear and put it back on the shelf. But Tiki turned around. He almost yelled. The flashlight dropped on the floor. In front of him was the robot Mr. Funny Dummy. It had been standing close behind him ever since. The plastic eyes looked so real.
What the hell?
Tiki frantically picked up the flashlight and inspected the robot. How did this thing walk on its own? He's sure a few minutes ago there had not been any robot standing there. Just then, Tiki noticed large shoe prints everywhere. It's when he realized there's someone else in the room. Following the footsteps, Tiki was led to the staff door. Mr. Earl once said that this is the way to the basement. Since there are many electrical devices down there, no staff are allowed to go down there.
But in this case, I have no choice, right?
Tiki didn't have time to give it a second thought. He turned the knock, Surprisingly, the door was wide open. Tiki carefully stepped into the dark hallway to arrive at the basement. There were so many Mr. Funny Dummy down here. They're all dirty and sprawling. They must be defective goods, Tiki thought. They gave off a weird stench that made him nauseous. And as soon as Tiki saw the generator, a shadow ran past him.
Who's that?
Nobody answered. Tiki thought it might be a game of some kids. He turned on the power, determined to catch the intruder. Suddenly, from the upstairs came the sound of rushing footsteps and unceasing laughter. Tiki angrily leaves the basement. Welcoming him is, still, a dense darkness. When heading to the row of stuffed animals, Tiki noticed that Robot was gone. The fear spiked. Tiki knew he had to get out of the funny toy shop. But when he reached the entrance door, he was blocked by the robot from earlier. Tiki tried to calm down, but his throat tightened when he heard the laughter behind. Tiki turned around. In front of him now was a tall man wearing a suit and wearing a Mr. Funny Dummy's head. He was holding a sharp axe, slowly walking towards Tiki.
I told you not to turn on the lights, didn't I?
Saying that, the madman dashed forward and swung his axe down. Tiki tried to hide behind the stalls, but he soon found. He had no choice, but kept running while continuously dodging the axes that were almost cutting his head off. The killer rushed to Tiki's side, kicking him so hard. This time, he failed to dodge the axe and fell into the basement. The murderer was right behind him. There comes another slash. Luckily, it didn't take his life, but severely injured his right hand. Tiki screamed in pain, gritted his teeth, and ran into the tunnel, searching in vain for a way to fight back or at least escape. He tripped over one of the dummies as he ran. As it fell, its head falling off to reveal a rotting corpse inside. In the dark, Tiki realized the security uniform.
Welcome to my Mr. Funny Dummy playground. Do you like my work?
The murderer laughing while slowly raising the axe. This is it, Tiki thought, and he closed his eyes tightly. The killers collapsed to the ground. Mr. Funny Dummy's head fell off. Oh God. Inside there was none other than Mr. Earl. Blood splashed all over his head. His eyes rolled back. He's struggling. Tiki's vision faded. He fainted from exhaustion and blood loss. It took Tiki a few days to wake up. At the hospital, he learned that the police had been investigating this case for nearly 3 months. Turns out Earl, the shop owner, loves simulating the Mr. Funny toy shop game. So he used the same tricks to murder 20 security guards at the store. Surprisingly, Joydo is an undercover cop who was stuffed into Mr. Funny Dummy in the basement. It took a lot of effort for Joydo to get out. After successfully escaping, he reported the evidence to his boss and promptly returned to the crime scene. That's when he caught Earl in the act and saved Tiki's life. The police also showed Tiki the pictures of Mr. Funny Dummy with the victim's name written on it. And the robot blocking his exit was labeled Tiki.
Finally, I found my first job as a shift employee at Taco Bell. It wasn't a high-paid job, but I appreciated it anyway. I often worked in the morning, but today my boss suddenly asked if I could change to the night shift from 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. Working the night shift is paid higher than usual, so I said yes. The store was quite empty at night. There was nothing much to do, so Lizzie and I just took turns to tend the counter. Lizzie was sitting idle in the kitchen and listening to the news on her phone. Recently, a serial killer has been reported to be on the run. Lizzie was interested in the breaking news, and so she always wanted to update the latest ones. I didn't care much about the news, just sat there looking at the heavy rain outside the glass door. This kind of weather made my mood even worse. Under the dim light, a customer wearing a black raincoat opened the door and moved toward the counter.
Welcome to Taco Bell.
I said politely. That man looked at the menu on the table for a long time.
We're very sorry for this inconvenience, but the restaurant is out of power. We only have tacos meal.
Damn it, he whispered, then pointed to the tacos meal menu.
Which flavor would you like, sir?
Then I asked a few more questions, ready to take notes.
What sauce would you like to have?
Whatever.
Do you drink soft drinks?
Yes.
Soda or juice?
Whatever.
Do you want to put in...
He banged on the side table and rushed to grab my neck. His eyes were bloodshot red. Then he yelled at me.
Quit mouthing and bring me food.
I was scared to the point of tears. This was my first time dealing with such a rude customer. In the kitchen, Lizzie heard a loud noise and rushed out. But instead of intervening, Lizzie stood there and stared at him. For a moment, she seemed to be shaking with fear.
The murderer was witnessed to appear in a black raincoat most of the time. The police are tracing his whereabouts at the moment.
Hurry!
That man raised his voice again and got off my neck. My knees buckled and I gasped for air after almost suffocating. Lizzie was trembling while preparing food for him. That man paced back and forth in front of the counter as if he was monitoring us. As soon as Lizzie completed the meal and gave it to him, he grabbed it immediately. Taking a crumpled note from his pocket, he threw it on the bar and left. We just stood there full of suspicion and fear. He didn't even pay enough for the meal. After making sure that the man was gone, I breathed a sigh of relief. I went back to the counter, but slipped and fell. Lizzie quickly helped me up, but at that moment, I found my hand was covered by a red liquid. On the freshly cleaned floor, there were patchy red footprints. Lizzie and I looked at each other. We were all in shock. Just then, Lizzie's phone got a new report about a murder in the nearby area. There was no doubt that we'd just met the serial killer, and even served him food. We stood inside the restaurant, peering outside to see if the man was gone. It was raining heavily, and the man was nowhere to be seen.
We must get out of here,
Lizzie said. I knew Lizzie was trying to be calm, but I could hear her voice shaking. On the outside, it was still raining and freezingly cold. Lizzie was so scared that she dropped the key. I quickly picked it up and locked the front door for her. There was a sudden flash of lightning, and for 1 second we could see clearly our reflection on the glass window. But there were 3 shadows. It was him. He came back. The murderer in the black raincoat came to dispose of us. Before we could run away, he stabbed Lizzie with a sharp knife right in her back. When he pulled the knife out, his face was covered in her blood. Lizzie fell to the ground. I was frozen. That man raised his knife again and turned to look at me. When he was about to swing the knife, Lizzie grasped the blade by her hand, which was bleeding profusely.
Run!
Lizzie struggled for breath. I was too terrified to move an inch. The man snatched the knife. Lizzie was pierced continuously, blood splashing all over the ruthless killer. I ran away in the rain, and the murderer, after pulling the knife from Lizzie's body, quickly chased after me. At that time, my ears were filled up and my eyes could no longer see anything. I kept running in the rain until I saw the light from a car approaching.
What happened?
The driver rolled down the window and asked me.
Help me.
The driver opened the door for me to get in and quickly turned around. I looked in the rearview mirror. That man, who now knew he missed a prey, was standing in the rain. Even though I didn't see him clearly, I could feel his eyes on me. But I know and remember exactly what I have been through. More than 20 years have passed. The memory of the strange parade still haunts me, even in my sleep. July 4th, 20 years ago, my parents and I went to my father's brother's house in the suburbs, which took us 4 hours of driving. I was overwhelmed by the gorgeous view of the street. I even saw the colorful antique cars ready for the parade.
Where are the parade people from?
I asked my cousin, Claire.
I don't know.
Claire shrugged. I noticed that the cars were moving into the forest.
I wonder where they'll go after the parade.
Not waiting for Claire to answer, I ran after the convoy into the forest.
Max! Max! Wait!
Ouch! Suddenly I slipped and fell. Claire helped me get up, and the two of us kept chasing after those people. Claire and I ran into the forest, but when we got deeper, all the colorful cars had disappeared, as if they had evaporated.
Where are they?
I turned to Claire, but was surprised to find out that she too had disappeared.
Claire?
I panicked and called her name, but all I received was silence.
Claire? Where are you?
There was no reply. The many noises of the parade resounded in the air. Peeking through the foliage, I saw a man in a strange outfit, looking like Uncle Sam. He was very tall and skinny. His head swayed, then slowly moved in front of me.
Happy 4th of July.
He greeted me in a hoarse voice.
Who are you?
A little scared, I stepped back.
Are you looking for Claire? The little girl has already joined us. Follow me.
He was like a robot. After finishing his sentence, he quickly turned away. I couldn't wait to see Claire, so I followed the man. The sight before me made my eyes widen in surprise. That was the parade in the town earlier, but the people looked very strange. They were like a circus troupe, and even though they were all dressed in festive costumes, their bodies were in many different shapes. Some were tall and raw-boned, some were terribly fat, and some had a super crooked gait. The only thing they had in common was their black eye sockets and lifeless faces.
Happy 4th of July. Come and join us.
One man handed me a strange flag and hat. At that moment, I was hypnotized. For a second, I forgot about Claire and just unconsciously kept following those strangers. As the procession passed through a cemetery,
Ouch!
I suddenly tripped. That brought me back to my senses to see Claire right in front of me. She was in a weird dress, just like the crowd. I pushed my way through the crowd and walked over to her.
Hey, Claire!
I called.
Claire!
I patted her shoulder again, but she seemed to ignore me. I panicked and pulled Claire away. The others immediately turned their heads to chase after us. I was scared to death, tears welling up in my eyes. I didn't know what to do but pull Claire and run as fast as possible. After running a while, I was so tired that I stopped.
Claire, are you okay?
Claire's face terrified me. Her two eye sockets were like a black hole.
Claire!
I cried and shook Claire, but she didn't sober up.
You joined them!
A shiver went down my spine. Poor Claire.
Join us! Join us!
The strange people still chased right after us, especially the man in the strange hat who kept shouting those words. I was too terrified, so I left Claire to run away. I didn't stop until I saw a glaring light. I used all my strength to get there. When I woke up, I found myself lying on the bed. Adults said that they found me panting in front of the forest. Perhaps I had bumped into something. When I asked about Claire, everyone looked at me with puzzled expressions. "There is no Claire," my uncle said. This almost drove me crazy. I obviously had a cousin named Claire, and together we followed the parade into the woods, even taking part in the bizarre procession. Even though I kept insisting her existence, they still didn't believe me. They assumed that the story about Claire and the strange parade was purely my imagination. She joined them.
Karen arrived home at 3 a.m. The weekend business trip drained all of her energy. Even so, Karen still got up early to make breakfast for Anderson, her fiancé. For her, a sandwich and a morning cup of black coffee was a great compensation for the time away from home. As usual, Anderson was dressed in a neat suit and sat cross-legged in an armchair in the center of the living room. He is handsome, reserved, and has his own rules. Reading the morning newspaper was an example. Regardless of weekdays or Sundays, the first thing he does is always reading the newspaper, especially in recent days, when there has appeared more and more missing people in the local area. Is anything new? Karen asked, placing the coffee cup in front of Anderson. Police have confirmed all the missing cases are related. They were all young girls found dead in their 23s. My age range, huh? Karen thought, with a shiver. Anderson, still focused on the newspaper, ignoring her expression, he added, "Oh, and all the murderers have something in common. They lost their teeth. How on earth can there be such sick people?" The cases usually happen around 6 to 7 p.m., when everyone is on the way from work. The last victim was found dead on Sunday, the day Karen was on a business trip. Maybe if Karen wasn't away that day, the victim would be her too. Except for the sick murderer, no one knows for sure. Suddenly, the breath on the back of her neck startled her. Anderson had been standing behind her ever since. He hugged her from behind, kissed her cheek, and greeted her at work. All day, Karen couldn't put the images of poor victims out of her mind. She got home at 5 p.m. earlier than usual. Anderson is far from coming. When she got home, Karen went straight to the bathroom. Bubble bath with Epsom salt for a luxurious evening will erase all her troubles. But today is the exception. Despite being immersed in the warm water, Karen can't help but wonder, but why teeth? In such a chaotic situation like this, you never know when you would be targeted by the perverted killer. That scared Karen. Fear fluttered in her stomach, but at least she had Anderson, a fiancé who would protect her at any cost. Thinking like that, she calmed down a bit to start enjoying the evening. The steam from the tub rose up, making her vision and everything sink into illusion. Half an hour passed, and Karen noticed something was off today. Karen didn't know why, but she began to feel pain and discomfort all over her body. There's something unusual in the bathtub today. Salt grains. It's been so long since Karen put them in the tub, yet they didn't seem to dissolve at all. Instead, they poked at her, stinging. Karen reached down to the bottom of the tub, picking up a few seeds to look at. "Oh my God, a tooth!" She panicked, rushed out and flushed the water. Karen felt like she could throw up. All of them are teeth, jagged, covering the tub. "Oh no, 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 no." In her 23 years of life, Karen has never felt so scared. At that moment, she heard the entrance door open. Anderson is back. At this moment, Anderson's face this morning flashed through her mind. While he was reading the newspaper, he smiled. A strange, vicious smile.
I'd say the job was not too hard for me. However, the late-night customers were often not easy to deal with, and I met one on my very first time working the night shift. It was a summer evening, I was walking around the stalls, rearranging the items on the shelves. Suddenly, I saw a suspicious woman. She was wearing a huge travel backpack on her shoulder and looking around surreptitiously. It was odd that she just stood there for 15 minutes without buying anything. I felt rather strange, but didn't dare to question or get in trouble on my first day on duty, so I went to the clothing store and rearranged the items there.
Martha, a customer at the frozen meat counter needs help. Get there now.
That was Jonathan, the store manager, observing my job over the radio.
Copy that.
I said back and quickly moved toward there. Surprisingly, the one who needed assistance was the suspicious woman I met earlier. When she saw me approaching, she suddenly left.
How strange. What exactly is she looking for?
I frowned slightly and thought to myself, anyways, I still followed her. As she approached the knife counter, I decided to stop her.
Madam, what are you looking for?
My sudden question startled the woman. She immediately turned to look at me, giving me a forced smile.
I was looking for bread.
Bread? Hasn't she gone back and forth to the bakery a few times?
Bread is over there, in the dairy section.
I felt odd, but smiled and showed her the direction. Instead of saying thanks, she grimaced and left in anger as if I had just done something very rude. Suddenly, just a few aisles away from where I stood, a high-pitched scream rang out. I hurriedly ran over to find that a creepy woman was holding a camp knife and swinging around to scare everyone. She even almost injured a guest.
Jonathan, we're having a problem. Please come over here.
I said over the radio and quickly dialed 911. The woman was still standing there. Her head began to twitch with bloodshot eyes. Her mouth was watering and she was puffing quite hard.
Ma'am, please, put the knife down.
I tried to say in a calm voice, but that woman did not listen. She was still very fierce, her hand firmly grasping the knife.
Ma'am,
I repeated.
Shut up!
The woman shouted, pointing the knife at me. I was so terrified I stepped backward. At that moment, I noticed she kept scratching her neck as she held the knife forward. No one dared to get even one step toward the madwoman.
My baby!
Another woman spoke up. She seemed to be scared to death. The baby carriage was only 2 meters away from the crazy woman. Everyone was so petrified. But then the most unexpected thing happened. The baby in the carriage began to cry intensely.
Shut up! Shut up!
The creepy woman clutched her head and screamed. Then she turned around to see where the crying was coming from. The knife stuck down the item on the counter. Fortunately, Jonathan was able to rush out to push the carriage away and avoid the blade. The woman still seemed angry. She stared at Jonathan with bloodshot eyes.
The police are coming!
I shouted. The woman turned to look at me. As soon as I said that, I trembled in fear and stepped back. The woman with a creepy smile walked towards me. My whole body stiffened, and I couldn't move. "Police here! Put down your weapons!" The police officer promptly appeared and shouted. The woman stopped and raised her head. She was still breathing heavily, looking madly at the police officer. "Put the knife down," he repeated. The woman remained silent. Her eyes turned to look at me. I was so scared that she would aim it at me. "I said, put the knife down!" The officer said it again. I could see how hard he was trying to stay calm. The insane woman appeared defiant, clutching the knife firmly in her hand. She rushed towards me while raising the knife above her head. The woman fell to the ground, her whole body convulsing, her eyes widening from the electric shock. The officer quickly ran over with the help of several other guests, handcuffing her. I sat on the ground to stare at the madwoman who was taken away. My heart was pounding violently in my chest. After that unpleasant encounter, I became more alert. Whenever I saw a woman with a backpack on her back, the memories of that horrible night just flooded back again.
That nightmare keeps coming back again and again. It was Friday night. I had a night shift at a 7-Eleven gas station. I used to be a medical student. I didn't have any financial support, so I went to work part-time to earn extra income. I usually didn't garner as many customers as the day shift would. Maybe just the occasional night owls or creeps that would stop by. Let me in! Let me in! Let me in! Dealing with such guys, I usually locked the window and ignored it. However, such incidents didn't happen often, so I didn't mind either. $30 for pump 3, please. It was Lisa, a patron that I've been keeping an eye on for quite some time. Lisa must have been assigned to work the night shift like me. After putting the money in the drawer, I locked eyes with her to observe more of this woman's charm. Lisa was refueling, but her gaze was elsewhere. And next to her, I saw the same homeless guy approaching her. His eyes were bloodshot and twitchy. This freak again. Son of the... Before I could finish my sentence and run out to warn Lisa, I froze. The man yanked the gas pump from the vehicle and sprayed her with gasoline. I never saw that coming. I quickly called 911 and was about to help, but as soon as I reached the door, I knew it was all too late. The man lit, and Lisa's gasoline-soaked body was literally on fire. Hello, what's your emergency? The other end of the line picks up the phone, but I'm dead in my track. Lisa yelled out in agony, her screams tearing up everything. It was the scream of a soul dying. Help me! You have to help me! My whole body is drenched in sweat. It's 2 a.m. So, today, I've only got 3 hours of sleep. I walk out of the bedroom and go to the kitchen to have a drink. A glass of cold water will bring my heart rate back to normal. Then, I decide to take a trip down to the basement even though I was there all night. The basement is dim. My eyes catch a weak light shining from the corner of the room. On the old mattress lies the person I love so much. She's sleeping peacefully. Lit would be nice if she was always quiet like this. Suddenly her eyes get wide open and she stared dead at me. Ah, honey, do you wake up so early? She doesn't utter a word. Only when I'm about to leave, she grabs my arm and moans, "Please, help me." Darling, I'm helping. It's only getting better, I promise. As soon as I finished my sentence, she went crazy like an animal. She was messing around and tearing me apart. I took a step back, and she still stormed forward despite her unhealed wounds. As expected, the chain from her ankle jerked her back, making her fall to her knees. Normally, Lisa is very gentle, girlfriend. But at some times like this, only this chain can hold her back. I gave her an injection to put her back to sleep, then locked the basement and went back to my bedroom. Half a year has passed, but the police and those people still haven't given up on Lisa. If only they knew that she was with the one who loves her the most, accepts her no matter how distorted she becomes. Of course, if you're wondering, the guy that made her come to be like this was taken care of a long time ago. I left everything behind, just for Lisa, after she finally asked me for help that night. You don't understand, neither will she. I get it, but I for sure will never give up on her, ever. Hello, what's your emergency?
The Millers have 2 daughters, Clara and Ellen. Unfortunately, Ellen, the older sister, was born with a birth defect and spent the rest of her life in a wheelchair. It was a snowy day. Clara and Ellen just came home, and immediately her mother complained.
Clara, did you scare your friends with spiders? The teacher called me again.
Clara sighed, so her mother knew it. But because her parents were very indulgent, she would get away with it this time. As she thought, she put on a pitiful expression and said,
No, Mom. She made a fuss about it. It was just a prank.
Because she was protected by Ellen, she got rid of the crime. Then, Clara pushed Ellen's wheelchair up the stairs and went to her room.
Seriously? I only got 20,000 views for this video?
As soon as she opened TikTok, Clara was extremely angry. Actually, what the teacher said is not quite wrong. Not only did Clara bring spiders to scare her friend, but she also forced her to eat them alive. Clara responded with a shrill laugh.
No one dares to save you.
While struggling to find a new way to increase the view, she suddenly heard her mom calling for dinner. Clara just turned around and was startled because Ellen had been waiting for her at the door since. As soon as she saw Clara, Ellen quickly turned away. At that moment, Clara had a crazy idea. Ellen's leg wouldn't feel anything anyway, Clara thought. Then she hurriedly called down.
Mom, we're coming.
While setting the phone to recording mode, Clara slowly pushed down Ellen's wheelchair. She only went half of her way when the chair suddenly shook and Ellen fell down the stairs.
Ellen, no!
Clara screamed, but she couldn't hold her sister in time. As soon as she heard the noise, Mrs. Miller rushed out of the kitchen, and witnessing this scene, she was stunned. Ellen collapsed at the bottom of the stairs, and due to the fall from above, the joint of her leg was broken and twisted backward. Even the wrist was no longer in its original joint shape. Ellen lost consciousness, and Mrs. Miller quickly dialed 911. No one noticed Miller's eerie smile as she pressed the save video button. 2 weeks later, Ellen had to stay at home. Since that video, Clara's TikTok view has significantly increased. Some praised, some criticized, but in the end, they all just considered it an incident. Recently, Clara had run out of ideas. She came back to a lot of things: music, punk rock fashion, and videos forcing her friends to eat worms. But nothing seemed to attract as many views as the scene where Ellen falls down the stairs. So Clara decided to make another video with Ellen, but this time she would be more creative. On a cold February evening, when the Millers were asleep and Ellen climbed onto a bed by herself, the house sank into the stillness of sleep. But there was one person who hadn't slept, and that was Clara. She was in the kitchen and streaming on TikTok.
Okay, guys, this is all we need.
Clara took out a sharp knife from the kitchen. Then she headed straight to the second-floor bedroom where Ellen was sleeping. Clara stroked her sister's serene face, curious about this face in a few more minutes.
Let's do this.
Clara looked into the camera and then slowly raised the sharp knife. With one hand, she pressed the rag to her sister's mouth and held it tight. With the other hand, she stabbed her sister with a strong, decisive blow to her stomach. Ellen woke up in a panic. Before she could understand what was going on, the next slash continued to fall, and then another to another slash. Ellen's pain was in her bones. She tried to struggle, but couldn't get rid of it. All Ellen could do was to let out a hum.
Don't spoil the evening.
As soon as she finished speaking, Clara stabbed the knife straight into Ellen's neck. Blood spurted from it, splashing all over her face and clothes. God, Clara didn't think things would get this messy. She quickly covered the pillow over the face and neck of Ellen, who was now struggling on the bed. However, the layer of blood quickly soaked the pillow. It felt like enough now. Clara ended the stream, then quietly went outside the house and called 911.
Clara Miller, 14, was arrested at the scene. The murder happened while the Millers were sleeping, and no one knew about it. Due to blood loss, the victim did not survive and officially died at 4 a.m. today. A video is becoming viral on TikTok, believed to be the video the murderer shot right after stabbing her sister to
stab my sister. I stab my sister. I stab my sister. I stab my sister. I stab my sister.
It took me a couple of weeks to find affordable accommodation. It was the Celine Hotel, with a pretty cheap rental rate, even being located in the center of downtown Los Angeles. So, I booked a room without hesitation. Sharing a room with me was a girl from Canada, named Sharon. Sharon was quite weird. I mean, most of the time she showed a cold or grumpy face, which made it hard to strike up a conversation with her. More than once I saw her violently throw her bottles of medicine into the trash, but then just pick them up and put them back in her backpack. I guess she was suffering from some kind of illness. I felt for her, but her strange behavior really made me sick. I often heard her mumbling something as if she was pissed off. Probably she was implying me, but I was unsure as she didn't even look at me. One day, when I was about to change my clothes, Sharon suddenly swung the door open. She rushed and panicked while frantically rummaging through her luggage.
This is not good. This is not good.
She mumbled. That was so rude of her, and I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to have an intervention with Sharon, so I moved slowly toward her.
Hey, Sharon? No, no, no!
She shouted.
Can't take it anymore!
Then she turned around and grabbed my wrist. I didn't expect a petite girl like Sharon to be so strong. My wrist was squeezed so tightly that I started to feel the pain. Sharon panted, her bloodshot eyes staring at me with her gnashing teeth. She was going crazy.
Sharon!
I called her name in agony while her hand was still brutally crushing my wrist.
Why don't you let me go?
Sharon yelled, but I didn't understand what she was saying.
Why?
She suddenly grabbed my shoulder. I was really scared at this point. I used all my strength to push her hand away. God, she squeezed horribly.
Why? Why?
She still couldn't stop screaming. I had no choice but to push her so hard that she fell, then run away from the room before she could do anything worse. That's enough of it. I couldn't bear it any longer. Immediately, I informed the receptionist to move Sharon to another room. When the hotel manager came to my room very soon after, I laid still in bed and watched Sharon pack her things up. At that moment, she just looked at me, her eyes strangely sad. She dragged the suitcase and followed the hotel manager without saying a word. That day, when I took a shower, I realized the water pressure seemed to be weak with an unusual smell. So I turned off the faucet and then went to bed. In the middle of the night, while dreaming, I suddenly woke up to see a figure standing in the corner of the room. That hoodie reminded me of Sharon.
Sharon?
For a moment, I breathed a sigh of relief, but just a second later, I had a sense that something was wrong. Her whole body was drenched in water. I could clearly hear the dripping sound on the floor. Her hair was tangled in clumps. Her limbs were swollen and mottled. Sharon just stood there with her head down for a while. Then suddenly she walked away. For unknown reasons, I subconsciously followed Sharon even though I was stiff and terrified.
Sharon? Where are we going?
She didn't answer, but led me to the elevator. Sharon stared at the elevator buttons without saying a word. We walked through the hallway with bright red lights until we met a locked iron door. Sharon stopped. She suddenly turned her head. Her eye sockets were a black hole from which two lines of black water flowed. Her face was pale, puffy, with her mouth wide open. I woke up startled, sweat drenching my pillow. In the stillness of the night, I could even hear my heart pounding in my chest. It was just a nightmare. The phone kept ringing for a while. That was a call from the hotel manager. He declared Sharon was missing. They showed me the camera footage. Oh my God, Sharon! She was showing signs of strange behavior in the hotel elevator, as if hiding from someone. I was even more shocked when I realized that the time displayed on the camera was the day Sharon got mad. The police told me not to leave the hotel during this time. The missing case of Sharon was really shocking. Everyone was searching for her. I returned to the bathroom to wash my face. Then I found the water had an unpleasant stench. It even had an abnormal color, brownish and a rotten smell like sewage. I couldn't take this anymore, so I decided to report it to the hotel manager. It turned out I wasn't the only one having trouble with the water. A married couple on the same floor also complained of drinking water with a strange smell. A maintenance worker, together with the hotel manager, inspector, and the police, went to the rooftop to check the water tanks. And when the heavy roof manhole was gradually opened, everyone was all shocked and terrified. Horror story that haunts me until today. 10 years ago, when I was a 17-year-old girl, my mom asked me to babysit the neighbor's kid because they had to go to a party. Well, of course, I couldn't say no to her. However, the kid that I was supposed to babysit was 16 years old. His name was Tyler. He suffered from an intellectual disability, and people said that his mind was like a 5-year-old.
Hi.
I tried to be friendly, but Tyler gave me a really frightened glance. I mean, really frightened.
Goodbye and enjoy the party, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson.
I waved my hand as I closed the door. There were only me and Tyler in the house now.
So, I'm Tammy. Your name is Tyler, isn't it?
But Tyler didn't care at all. He only focused on finishing his painting stuff.
Tammy, could you please turn off the TV?
Okay. What are you painting?
I was curious. Tyler still didn't answer.
Can I join too?
Tyler nodded his head instead of saying a word. So we were both coloring and painting our own works of art.
Are you hungry?
I asked. Tyler nodded while painting attentively.
I'll make you something. What would you like to eat?
Up to you.
Tyler mumbled. So I went to the kitchen and prepared some sandwiches which were Tyler's favorite. When I came back, Tyler was no longer painting his picture. He was sitting there and mumbling.
Go out? I can't. Mommy won't let me. Can I? Where are you? Really? My babysitter?
Tyler?
I was a bit freaked out, though. After hearing my voice, he stopped mumbling.
Here, your sandwiches.
Tyler ran to the kitchen before touching the food. I guessed he was getting his favorite orange juice. At that moment, I had a closer look at the picture on the table. I guessed it was Tyler in the picture, but there were two of them in the same clothes. One looked normal with a smile, and the other, gosh, he had two scary dark eye sockets that gave me goosebumps. I ran quickly to the kitchen. Tyler was standing still, and there was broken glass pieces on the floor.
Don't move, Tyler!
I rushed to clean the mess. Meanwhile, Tyler was still standing emotionlessly, like he was a mannequin.
Tyler! Tyler!
I shook his shoulders in panic. I didn't scold or blame Tyler for breaking the glass, as I thought it was a harmless mistake. However, Tyler seemed a little bit different, like he wasn't himself anymore.
Tammy, TV remote.
He suddenly turned to me. That was the first time he looked me straight in the eyes, and I could feel the cold shiver running down my spine.
Sure.
There was news about a serial murder on TV. It was Tyler who was giggling at the news.
Tyler, you okay?
I was a bit freaked out now.
Yeah. Yeah.
He replied without even looking at me.
Should I change to a cartoon channel?
I reached out to get the remote. He quickly gripped my wrist.
If you touch it, I'ma kill you.
He said, cold-blooded. I quickly pulled my hand back. There was something strange and scary about him. Not only did he watch the murder news calmly, but he also ate a lot of snacks, which I was told was what he hated the most.
Tell me, bring me milk. Milk. Milk!
Okay.
I went to the kitchen to get the bottle of milk. While I was pouring the milk into the glass, something just popped up in my mind.
Tyler, you're lactose intolerant, aren't you?
My body was frozen when I saw Tyler standing in the middle of the room.
Shino! No! Don't hurt her! Shut up! Shino! Not to kill her!
Tyler!
Tyler turned around, staring at me with his dark eye sockets. In his hand was a sharp knife.
Tyler, where did you get that?
I stepped back. Tyler didn't hear my voice anymore.
Tyler, drop the knife down.
I tried to keep calm.
No! No! You have to die!
That voice wasn't Tyler's anymore. And before he rushed over with the knife, I ran quickly outside and locked the door. I tried to call Mr. and Mrs. Wilson in a panic, realizing how frightened I was. They immediately left the party and called 911. When Tyler's parents came home with the police, Tyler was back to normal. No one believed me, no matter how many times I tried to explain. Even though 10 years have passed now, I still couldn't forget what happened that day. The day Tyler, the neighbor kid that I babysat, was replaced by his evil and cruel personality. He was so excited to see the gloomy woods ahead.
If you get lost, just follow the rope. It'll show you the way out.
The tour guide said when the car stopped at the foot of the mountain.
It's very beautiful and deadly.
He tried to get as much footage as he could before it got dark.
So there's no one here, just us.
Ben panned the camera around the woods. The 100-year-old soaring tree trunk surprised and attracted Ben. Well, it was not as scary as people said. He kept following the small path until he came across a tree with a piece of paper on it. It was a missing person poster, but it wasn't the only one. Dozens of these posters were pinned on every tree around. The number was no less than 10.
Oh my God, they're all missing.
Ben moved the camera closer to the posters. Skimming through the information, he realized that the victims all went missing on the 13th day of the month.
All these people came from different places, but they all disappeared on the 13th.
Ben turned impatient. Were these pieces of paper real, or were they just some practical jokes? If the information was true, something terrible must have happened. Then who was the one to post these papers? If they were fake, then who would make this terrifying prank? Could it be some kind of monstrous ritual?
Guys, what do you think? I think this might be some kind of ritual. Oh, shoot!
He almost cried when he noticed a figure sitting on the logs. Suddenly, the thing turned around to look at him. Its shining eyes startled him. Scared, Ben immediately took the camera and ran away. And apparently, the creature was chasing him. He kept running and running without looking back. Even when he slipped, he didn't quit running. When he reached the empty lot, he stopped, held his breath. Now he barely heard any sound of that thing.
Guys, I thought it was a bear or something.
Ben decided to spend the night on this vacant field. He set up a small tent and gathered dry wood to build a fire. The light calmed him down a bit. Tired as he was, he didn't intend to take a nap in case that bear would come back and attack him. To combat the body slump, Ben took out his camera and looked at the photos. After a while, he fell asleep. When he woke up, it was almost morning. Ben packed up his things and got up to find his way back. However, the path led him back to the empty ground where he had camped last night. Strange. He looked around and kept walking, and he was back in the same place again.
Impossible!
Ben decided to carve a mark on every tree he passed. But whatever he did, it still led him to that same place.
Damn it!
Ben cursed angrily, then turned in another direction. He didn't remember the guide's instructions.
Follow the rope. It will take you out of the forest.
Exhausted, Ben wandered hopelessly through the woods.
Is anybody there? Help me, please!
But the echo was only his own scream. Ben tried to locate the direction without paying attention to the ground.
Ah!
He stepped on a bear trap. His left foot clamped like it was crushed under the sharp, serrated teeth. Ben painfully tried to get his foot out of the trap, but however hard he tried, more blood flowed out, and he could feel the pain devouring his brain.
Help! Help!
He could only scream out for help, but in the middle of the pine barrens, no one could hear his plea. Just as he was about to faint, he heard footsteps behind him. He was overjoyed, thinking he could be saved.
Oh, please! Help me!
He almost broke down, but the man didn't make a peep, just walked towards him, instead of helping Ben remove the trap. At this point, Ben noticed his brown fur coat, which was very similar to the fur on the monster he'd seen last night. But it was too late. The man raised the axe.
Why me?
When Ben was closing on his death, he realized that that day was the 13th.
No! No! No!
The disappearance of the male YouTuber vlogger Benjamin, or Ben, is receiving enormous attention. There are a lot of rumors surrounding the tragic incident.
The city that never sleeps is probably just too afraid to close its eyes. The House of Death, a famous brownstone off 5th Avenue, is reportedly terrorized by a whopping 22 ghosts. Shockingly, it became the crime scene of the latest case. As reported, the victims were a man and a girl, believed to be dad and daughter.
Woohoo! Guys, we found our next destination. Here we go, New York City! Phew! Hello, everyone. It's Ben again. The flight to New York was delayed by 2 hours. Anyways, let me show you House of Death, one of the most famous haunted houses in America. Okay, see you guys inside.
Working as a TikTok streamer is not as fun as I expected. I've created content inspired by haunted places, which was supposed to be viral. However, a few months have passed and my channel still only has 1,000 followers. House of Death, please make me shine. I dragged my suitcase inside the house. My plan is to spend the night here.
Okay, guys, I'm in. As you can see, there's dust everywhere. I guess this place was abandoned for a while. I don't know why, but this place gives me chills.
Then, I headed to a room, which appeared to be a bedroom, to set up the lights for tonight's stream. Jesus, this house isn't as scary as it's described on the TV. In this case, I guess I have to use that trick.
Oh, I guess we've got enough people here. Make sure you turn the light off to get the show started. Right. The most recent case happened 10 years ago, but the news actually covered a part of it. I've asked around, and it turns out before the murder happened, a family used to live here. 3 people, in fact. Yes, the news never mentioned the mother, right? From what I heard from the neighbors, that night, they heard the sound of a man screaming. The father? Yes. And then the little girl. Police searched everywhere, but the mother was never found. And the murder weapon was an ice pick. So sure enough, I think the mother murdered her husband and daughter, then killed herself somewhere.
The comment section started to get lively.
Why? Today, we will find out why she did what she did.
Then, more and more commenting. I thought it was because they were excited, but I was wrong.
Guys, you know I'm not scared of this stuff, right?
Just then, a sudden sound in the doorway startled me. It's like something falling to the floor.
Who's that?
I turned around to see no one, so I left my chair and got to the doorway.
Guys, you won't believe what I just found.
I tremblingly showed them what I had just picked up in the hallway. The ice pick.
Okay, guys, it's time we cleared things up.
While everyone was commenting on the ice pick, I set up my tools on the table.
All you need is paper, 2 candles, a lighter, a needle, and a bit of blood from the person who's communicating with ghosts.
I poked my thumb with a needle and squeezed it to get the blood out. Then, I put 2 straight red dots on the A4 paper. Below each dot, I wrote yes, no in red. Next, place 2 candles on top of the 2 dots and light the fire.
I haven't tried this yet, so I don't know how effective it is. But now we'll start the summoning, shall we?
The number of viewers is increasing, as well as my heart rate is increasing.
Spirit? Spirit? Come here. Spirit? Spirit? Are you here?
The screen is flooded with comments. Is there someone behind? I turned around, but there was no sign of anyone.
You guys almost got me.
I don't pay attention to the comments anymore and continue to summon the ghost.
Spirit? 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 Are you here? Oh my god. Did you see that? The yes candle just flickered. This is really happening.
Okay, I have to stay calm and ask questions.
Spirit, you used to live here, right? Spirit, you're 20 years older, right?
So maybe I'm talking to the murdered daughter. I'll keep asking the question.
Spirit, were you murdered in this house? Guys, I've got goosebumps. I still have to ask the important question. Spirit, you were murdered by your mother, right? So, yeah. I'm talking to that little girl. Now we're going to find out why the mother did it. But first, Spirit, besides you, is there anyone else in this house? And that is your mother? It's her! She's in this house!
Suddenly, the light flickered like crazy. Jesus, this damn house gave me a stroke of fear. But in return, the number of viewers is higher than ever.
What's wrong with everyone? Stop teasing me! There's no one behind! Okay, I'll go check. Wait for 10 seconds. Don't leave the screen. I got you! So this is a prank as a special gift to 1K followers. Thank you all for supporting me the whole time.
I turned to Jane, who was also laughing. Wow, she's such a shameless makeup witch. Even though I knew it was all fake, her makeup was so scary that I didn't dare look her straight in the eye.
Come on, Ben. You have to get used to this. Don't forget to pay me as you promised.
I couldn't focus on Jane's words. All I notice now is the empty table.
Jane, did you hide the ice pick? I've just left it right here.
Jane looked at me bewildered. Just then, her face turned painful. Blood splashed everywhere. Oh my God! Her eye was stabbed by an ice pick from behind. I have to get out of here, right now!
Receiving calls from viewers of a TikTok streaming video, the police rushed to the crime scene, known as House of Death. All they found is a corpse of a girl. She was stabbed in the eye and died of blood loss. Currently, the TikToker Benjamin is still missing. The police will continue to investigate.
Spirit, is your mother still alive?
The weather was terrible yesterday.
Yeah.
Since there was a construction site near Dunkin' Donuts, we lost a lot of loyal customers. It meant less work for John and me. I had nothing to complain about my job until one day. We were about to close the stall when a guest walked in. It was so hot outside, but he still wore a hoodie and his hair covered most of his face. So weird.
Welcome to Dunkin' Donuts.
The guest walked in, but the way he walked was abnormal. He walked along the wall to a table in the corner. It was like his back was glued to it.
Who's that freak?
John said as he didn't welcome this customer. I, on the opposite, thought this was just a rueful man, so I brought him the menu. As I came closer, I found this man was not as old as I thought.
2 vegan chocolate rainbow and 1 strawberry red, please.
The thing was, whatever he did, he fixed his head and back in one position, not to move an inch, like a pre-programmed robot. Then I was told that his name was Edward and he lived nearby. Perhaps because of his timid personality, he had never entered a store or restaurant. The more I got to know him, the more I found out that he and I had a lot in common. But John didn't like this guy at all.
Freak.
Many times, John deliberately spoke loudly for Edward to hear those words. One night, John had to serve Edward.
What did you say?
Suddenly, I heard him shout, then rushed to the guest like a wild animal. Edward was panicking and shaking his head. He didn't know what to do.
Hey, stop it!
I hurriedly approached.
He called me bastard,
John said in anger. But that sounds strange. Edward was one of the most polite people I had ever met. Seeing John's aggressive actions, Edward quickly left without saying any words.
Why do you keep protecting him?
Since that incident, John no longer disparaged Edward, but still expressed his displeasure. He once asked me,
Aren't you curious why that guy always walks like that?
Frankly, I was really curious but too shy to ask. So John told me his plan to know about the secret. That night, Edward came to Dunkin' Donuts as usual, and he even lent me a book. Before he sat down, I said,
I got off work early today. Would you wait for me a little bit and walk with me home?
Edward seemed so surprised after my information that he dropped the book on the ground. I quickly bent over to help him pick up the book, and I heard him say,
You stupid bimbo.
I looked at Edward in surprise, and he hurriedly waved his hand and said,
No, I didn't mean it.
But right on the spot, a slap made me fall to the ground. John jumped out of nowhere and punched Edward in the face. While John lifted me up, I heard Edward scream like crazy. He frantically tried to cover his head with his hands and stepped back against the wall. John violently grabbed Edward and yelled at his face.
Stop it, you freak! What do you want?
No! I didn't mean it! Please!
Edward was about to cry.
You'd better...
Before John finished his words, his hands were grabbed and squeezed by Edward. I even heard the sound of bones cracking. Then John was thrown aside. He rolled on the ground in pain with his arm disfigured. I heard Edward spew out a dozen curses, but his mouth didn't move. For a moment, I saw Edward's back turned. Behind his head, a wrinkled face, cruel and monstrously ugly.
You rat!
That creature growled and walked toward me. Edward's tall body was now strangely contorted. Just as the monster was about to catch me, I resisted fiercely. I slammed the thick book into his face and made it fall to the ground with a high-pitched hiss. At that moment, I heard Edward's voice.
Riley! Run!
I was so scared and ran out of the restaurant. When the police arrived, Edward was no longer there, and John was taken to the emergency room immediately. I later found out that Edward had suffered from a rare parasitic twin. That was why he had a strange creature behind his head. I quit the job at Dunkin' Donuts after that. Even though my life has returned to normal, I still think about Edward from time to time. I wonder where he is and what he's doing. I hope he can get rid of that monster to live a free life just as I am.
Huh?
this story was put in the same situation, and even though she's a grown-up now, she still remembers what happened that day. 14 years ago, on a sunny Sunday afternoon, Sophia and her mother went to Walmart for some groceries. Since Sophia had done a good job helping her mom with housework, as a reward, Mom would buy her a Barbie school bag. Sophia was so excited that she kept singing until they'd arrived at the parking lot. She was happy every time going to the supermarket. It was time to run and juggle along hundreds of parallel aisles.
Sweetie, you shouldn't be running around like that.
Zoe reminded her daughter before giving her the bag she always wanted.
Thank you, Mommy.
The little girl hugged her mother.
Darling, now go to the play area and stay there while I go buy some fruit, all right?
Zoe led Sophia to the play area.
Remember, just stay here. I'll be right back, all right?
And so there was only happy Sophia left among hundreds of toys of all kinds. While Sophia was looking around, a stranger quietly approached her.
Hello, little friend.
Hi.
Sophia was startled, but still replied in a friendly manner.
Where's your mommy?
Sophia didn't answer, but pointed towards the fruit counter.
So, you're here alone?
This man's voice and appearance started to make her stomach turn. Mom always said to never talk to strangers, so she wouldn't say any other words.
Aw, I'm so sad because I don't have any friends.
Sophia suddenly felt pity for him.
Don't cry. I get it.
Sophia gave the man a candy to comfort him.
Ah, thank you, little friend.
Sophia!
Zoe called out her daughter's name.
I'm here, Mommy.
Seeing that the kid was all right, Zoe turned away, continuing to talk on the phone with customers. When Sophia turned back, the man had already disappeared. The man wasn't really leaving, he was observing. Now he was quite sure that the mother wouldn't be back right away. So he returned to Sophia.
Hey, little friend.
Oh, hi.
Thanks for the candy.
You're welcome.
Hey, little friend, I have something for you. This is a thank you gift.
Sophia looked at the beautiful doll with amusement.
So pretty.
She marveled while stroking the doll. Suddenly, she was grabbed.
Sophia?
Zoe returned and her daughter had already disappeared.
Sophia!
There was no answer. Feeling that something bad might have happened, she panicked and ran out to find her child.
Sophia!
It were as though she vanished.
Oh my God! Sophia! Where are you?
Zoe went from one toy aisle to another, but couldn't see any kids that looked like hers. She started to regret leaving her daughter alone. As soon as she reached the doll stall, Zoe paused. Wasn't that the backpack that Sophia was wearing before? She ran around to ask for help.
Please help me. My daughter is missing.
Most people just ignored her because they didn't know what was going on. Finally, there was a Walmart security guard standing nearby.
Excuse me. My daughter is lost. Please help me.
She cried.
Please, calm down. I will immediately call the security center to find her,
the guard said.
Sophia!
Zoe immediately ran like crazy to where she heard her daughter. It seemed that Zoe's cries and Sophia's struggle worked. The man dropped the girl and ran away. Sophia ran towards her mother. Zoe immediately hugged her daughter and couldn't help crying.
I'm scared.
As soon as she met her mother, Sophia quickly hugged her neck.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, honey.
The man was quickly arrested. The incident stirred the media for a while and became a warning for mothers not to let their children play in supermarkets or shopping centers by themselves.
Sweetie, I'm sorry. From now on, I will never, ever let you out of my sight.
For the coffee junkies, it's all about my cousin Wild, who announced that he loved coffee more than anything else in this world, especially Starbucks. He said that 2 cups of coffee a day is a must, or else he can't stand the entire day. I thought that it would be fine at first, until one day, Wild became out of control. That day, I went to Starbucks for an espresso before going to work. There was a long line of people already, so I had no choice but to wait. Well, it looked like everyone was tired on Monday morning. I could tell that based on their grumpy faces. When it was my turn, I asked for an espresso, but before I pulled out my wallet, someone crashed into me so hard I almost fell. It was Wild, my cousin. After not seeing him for a long time, I didn't expect such an awkward encounter.
Hey! Where's my coffee?
Wild raised his voice.
Sir, please wait a moment.
A Starbucks employee named Bruce replied gently.
Bring it to me! Right now!
I was quite surprised to see him acting like that. Wild used to be so gentle and a kind man. This was the first time I had seen him so angry. At this point, Wild totally lost his patience, slamming the table, then grabbing the employee's collar. Bruce looked so confused as Wild insisted that his order was ignored. Shelby, the store manager who was notified of the incident, rushed to the counter.
Sir, may I know your concerns?
Wild pointed at Bruce's face and said to the manager,
This stupid dude forgot my order!
Bruce shook his head and looked at Shelby. Shelby gently asked Wild,
Sir, what did you order?
Go and ask your silly staff!
Wild yelled. Bruce pulled Shelby to a corner.
This man has finished the 7th cup. That's too much.
Give me the coffee!
Wild still screamed.
Sir, please calm down. It seems to be a misunderstanding here. Could I invite you into my office?
Shelby politely walked over to the guest.
No! Just bring my drink here! Right now!
Everything got worse when Wild refused to leave and the customers in line started to get impatient.
Hey, Wild, stop it!
I murmured, but he didn't seem to recognize me at all, which was so weird. At that time, another guy in Starbucks uniform walked out with my order. I was about to get the drink, but Wild was faster. He grabbed the hot cup and shoved it in Bruce's face. Bruce screamed in pain, clutching his face, which was now burned by the heat of the coffee. Oh my God! The espresso I ordered was extremely hot. Everyone was shocked. After doing that horrible thing, Wild stood panting with an empty cup in his hand. The manager immediately called 911 while others helped Bruce with first aid. Wild was still angry and kept glaring at Bruce with hatred.
That stupid rat forgot my order!
Wild returned to his seat after I dissuaded him, but his displeasure was still evident on his face. Bruce's burns were severe. Shelby allowed him to skip the shift to see the doctor. In the end, Shelby had to offer to compensate Wild. Even so, he still grudgingly took the cup and went back to his seat. The coffee cups were brought out to Wild one by one. He drank each cup in a single gulp, but that wasn't enough.
Bring me more! More!
His eyes quickly turned bloodshot, and he growled at Shelby. No one dared to stop him because he was still holding the porcelain cup in his hand.
More! More! More!
He just laughed and yelled. He kept drinking until they brought him the 10th cup. It didn't matter if it was iced or hot coffee. He just chugged the whole cup right away. It seemed he had lost all taste and sensation.
I want more coffee! I want more coffee!
He laughed as he grabbed Shelby, shoving the entire cup of coffee into her mouth. Even though the cup choked her, he still tried to force Shelby to swallow it. She would be suffocated by his damn actions.
Coffee! Coffee!
Wild had gone totally insane.
Wild, stop it!
I was terrified, rushing to stop him, but he just pushed me away. At this moment, the police promptly appeared to intervene.
Coffee!
Even when he got caught, he didn't stop screaming. Wild was taken to the hospital for neurological treatment soon after. The Starbucks store also banned him. Bruce quit his job because of the shock, and I haven't seen him ever since. 1 week later, Wild's condition was improved, and after hearing what happened, Wild didn't recognize himself anymore. As for me, after that incident, I switched to drinking tea instead of coffee, especially chai tea.
The police have recorded a total of 4 brutal murders in the past week. The common pattern in those cases is that the victim's head was cut off and brought away. Police are expanding their inquiry.
Mommy, can you stay home today?
Those words raised in Avery a sense of guilt for making her own daughter worry. She kissed the kid on the forehead.
Be good. Stay at home and take care of your sister. I'll come home early today, I promise.
Then the mother left home and began her workday. Avery was an Uber driver. That was a busy day, and she had to spend almost all day on the road. Very soon it was getting dark. There was a shortcut, a small path through the forest, which Avery always took to get home faster. When she just passed through the long tunnel, the Uber application informed her about a booking customer. But anyhow, she didn't accept this ride because she promised her little daughter to get home as soon as possible. It was past 11. Avery pressed the gas pedal. Lowering the window, she enjoyed the cool breeze on her face. When she just passed through the long tunnel, the Uber application informed her about a booking customer. In a moment of carelessness, Avery was startled when someone jumped out of nowhere in the middle of the road. She instinctively hit on the brake. The car lost control, and everything turned upside down.
Oh God, did I hit someone?
Avery was frightened. She tried to strain her eyes to see clearly, but there was no one on the street. Suddenly, she saw an arm from the outside reaching into the car and grabbing her shirt. The bloody hand was shaking so badly. Then a man showed up. It was the man who jumped out into the middle of the road.
Let me in.
Gosh, his whole body was covered in blood. His clothes were like rags. Perhaps this was because Avery hit him with the car. She quickly unlocked the car door to let the man in. In just a few more miles, Avery's car suddenly shook violently and she had to stop. The passenger also got down from the car to see the problem.
A nail? For God's sake. Doggone it.
Avery's tires, which had been pierced with some sharp spikes, were now flattened. The man standing nearby came up to her and said,
"Well, if you don't mind, I have a toolbox with me. It's in the back seat."
Avery rejoiced slightly. She told the man to check the condition of the tires while she got into the back seat to get the toolbox.
Hope he has pliers,
she told herself while opening his bag. But the moment Avery opened it, she was shocked to look at what was inside. There was a bunch of nails whose shape was exactly the same as the ones embedded in her tires now. Next to it was a bloody axe and a saw blade.
"What took you so long?"
Startled, Avery quickly closed the bag. At the same time, the man got into the front seat and closed the door. She tried to act normal.
I think I should get out of the car and wait for the rescue squad to come.
Avery was surreptitiously dialing 911 and managed to open the car door. The man looked at her, smiling expectantly. That's when she realized the car door was locked. That creepy man, who had been watching Avery in the rear-view mirror, suddenly leaned backward and asked,
"Did you really call the rescue team?"
Avery was startled when she realized the man's face was very close, perhaps inches away from hers. There was something so monstrous in his smile. His wide eyes and jagged yellow teeth made her nauseous.
What do you want? Get out of my car now!
Avery tried to sound calm. The man gasped for breath and said,
"But it's dangerous outside. Don't make me go there. I'm scared."
Then he laughed like crazy while raising his hand forward to strangle Avery. Just then, a dispatcher picked up the phone. Avery was feverish and accidentally touched the speakerphone button.
"It's 911. What's your emergency?"
The man was startled when he heard the voice on the phone. When he was caught off guard for a second, Avery pulled a hammer from the toolbox to defend herself. She used all her strength to smack him on the head, but the hit wasn't strong enough.
Well.
Avery swung the hammer wildly but was soon restrained. The murderer grabbed her hand and snatched the hammer, which made her fall backward. She fell on the toolbox, and all the things inside fell out. It turned out to be a human head, a horrifying scene Avery would probably never forget for the rest of her life. The blood that oozed from it soaked the bag, dirty and pungent. Suddenly, Avery remembered the breaking news earlier.
"So, maybe you found my little secret. But I don't want you to see it at all. So what should I do now? Tell me."
Please, I'll keep my mouth shut. I swear to God, please let me go.
Avery got even more petrified when she thought about her children. But that cold-blooded killer didn't heed her pleas. He laughed while approaching his prey. And then, hammer blows came crashing down. Her painful scream, overwhelmed by the sound of hammering, tore up the still air in the deep forest. Blood splattered everywhere, and the madman was extremely amused. He was overcome with pleasure watching his victim lying in blood. Avery fainted, tears streaming down her face as she thought of her daughter come home. Sleepy as she was, she hurried downstairs to meet her father. But something was odd. Daddy was not as happy as usual. He staggered up the stairs, glared at Elsa, then stepped straight to his room and slammed the door. While walking across her parents' room, Elsa heard an argument. This wasn't the first time her parents had had a quarrel, but this time Daddy seemed strangely violent. Worried about her mother, she immediately pushed the door and ran in. Daddy pushed Mommy down on the bed and yelled at her. He was acting like a monster, which made her so scared to step back. At that moment, she remembered her teacher's words.
Whenever you're in danger, call 911.
No time to think. She quickly grabbed the phone on the table and ran out of the room, leaving the insane father there with her mom.
Please, please!
When the ringing tone of the call connection rang, she prayed silently.
911, where's your emergency?
The dispatcher quickly picked up the phone.
Please, help! I need help!
She sobbed.
We're coming. Just don't hang up. Don't hang up, okay?
The dispatcher reassured her. The quarrel became more and more serious. Elsa panicked even more when she saw her parents starting to struggle and push each other. She sat in the corner of the room, covering her ears and crying in fear. The mother broke away from her abusive husband and quickly ran towards Elsa.
Aw, shoot! Where do you think you're going?
The potted plant was shattered. Her mother was lying on the ground, moaning in pain. Her right arm was broken and twisted, and the white bone was sticking out. Elsa and her younger sister were hiding in the closet. They sat still for so long until getting quite sure that their father wasn't around anymore. Elsa was about to get out of the closet.
Boo!
The father suddenly opened the door. Elsa's mother, from behind, swung the lamp at the father's head, giving him a blackout sudden enough to throw Elsa away. Her mom seized the chance to bring the two daughters out of the house, headed straight for the car, and locked it from inside. The father, holding his bleeding head, chased to the car.
Where are you going? Where are you going?
The angry man banged on the window. After hugging two little daughters to reassure them, the mother started the engine. But as soon as they drove away, the father suddenly jumped in front of the car. Mom braked sharply. She ran out of the car to find the father lying on the ground, rolling over in pain.
Bastard! You kill me! I gotta kill you too!
The father was still trying to scream. In the mother's hand was a rock from the lawn, and her eyes were filled with hatred.
No! Mommy!
Elsa stopped her mom before she did something unwise. The mom couldn't hold her tears as Elsa was also crying. She hugged her daughter, sobbing and crying.
Dad, please stop! It's me, Elsa! Your little Elsa!
Elsa turned her head toward her father. When he saw tears on his daughter's face, he realized something.
Oh, my poor Elsa.
Now he was wide awake.
My father is bleeding! Please come and help!
In the little girl's hand was still the phone which was connected to the dispatcher.
Don't worry, Daddy.
Elsa wiped her tear as she was looking at her father. After the incident, Dad had completely changed. He didn't even touch a drop of alcohol. The house was once again full of joy and happiness.
Hey, honey, we're back.
Afraid she would run away,
Wow, the suitcase looks so big.
I said. The previous guests, even if they rented the house for a week, did not bring a huge suitcase.
Maybe they are careful and always carry the necessary things with them.
That night, I was woken up by a constant ringing of the phone. But when I picked up the phone, there was no response other than a gasp. And then total silence.
Who is that? Hello?
I kept asking but got no answer, so I hung up. But then the phone kept ringing. Once again, I picked it up to find no response from the other end of the line. It made me angry.
You bastard! Call me again and I'll kill you.
Then no more calls in the night, so I could eventually lay down and quickly fall asleep. I hadn't seen Iris out for 2 days.
Maybe she's sick.
The next morning, Tim called to inform me that he would check out before the schedule due to personal reasons. I was quite surprised to see that Tim paid the full rent for 4 days and 3 nights. Before leaving, Tim sent a message to thank me and gave me a 5-star.
What a gentle guest he was.
I thought. Until 3 p.m., I decided to clean the apartment to prepare for the next guest. When I opened the door, a strong odor hit my nose.
What's that awful smell?
I frowned slightly. It was a bit surprising to me because this guy wasn't as neat as he seemed. The inside of the apartment looked normal. The tables and chairs were scattered, but not as dirty as I thought. But the smell was still strong.
It can't be like that.
I hurried forward and cleaned the bathroom first. That smell was even stronger.
Unbelievable!
I shook my head, feeling absolutely disappointed. On the floor, behind the tub, something yellow came out.
The stench is definitely coming from there.
I approached. As soon as I saw the thing behind the tub, the smell made me nauseous immediately. Oh my God, it was so horrible. The thing inside that plastic wrap gave off a disgusting smell. I couldn't do anything but keep myself away from that bag.
Hi.
A voice from behind startled me. That was Tim.
I forgot some stuff, if you don't mind. I will go now.
I nodded fearfully while my heart was still beating fast. Tim passed over me to pick up the plastic bag without noticing its horrible smell, then quickly left.
Send my hello to Iris. I wonder where she's been lately.
Tim looked at me and smiled cryptically, then nodded. After cleaning the bathroom, I moved on to the living room. I turned on the TV while cleaning around so that the work went smoother.
Breaking news. At 7 p.m. last night, police reported a barbaric murder in Smithfield in the dumpster of an apartment complex. The victim is a girl named Siri, 23 years old. The body was dismembered and locked in a suitcase. The head hasn't yet been found. The suspect was described as a 25-year-old man who was seen to be with the girl. If you have any information, please contact.
The doorbell rang, so I got to the door and peered cautiously into the peephole. It was Tim again, but he was even more monstrous than before.
I think I dropped my wallet somewhere. Would you mind if I got in to find it?
Tim said.
It's okay. No worries. Anyway, did you hear the news about a murder?
At the very moment when I hit the doorknob, something in my mind popped up. The victim's name was Siri, and Siri was the reverse of Iris.
There was a rumor. No matter what you do, or what your purpose is, never stay at a Chuck E. Cheese till the 5th night. Because if you do, you will go crazy or even die for no reason.
Nonsense.
Stephen laughed at the story. He thought this rumor was stupid.
So, are you still gonna take the job?
The manager asked.
Yeah.
Stephen shrugged.
Remember, after checking the electrical system, you better go back to the security room. Don't stay outside for too long.
The manager said while handing the keys to Stephen before leaving. On the first day of work, Stephen tried to show himself as a responsible employee. The first duty was to check the electrical system. Chuck E. Cheese at night was so damn quiet. The dim light made it hard for Stephen to see things clearly, so he had to use the phone's flashlight.
Well, it's broken.
Stephen flicked on the broken light switch in the hallway. Then he decided to go to the electrical system room through the dining table area. How did it get here? Stephen was surprised to see the mascot of Charles standing in the corner of the room. He then pushed it to the backstage. After checking the electrical system, Stephen returned to the security room. So boring. He leaned on the chair, sipping hot coffee and looking at the security camera. Here came the very first nuisance. What the hell? Stephen noticed a guy in uniform sweeping the arcade. Hey, it's late. Stop cleaning. You can do it tomorrow, Stephen said over the microphone. But that man ignored his words. Hey! Stephen lost his patience. Damn it! He said angrily and decided to walk over to the arcade. Did you hear what I said? He mumbled. But when Stephen got there, the arcade was empty. There were only the game machines covered with dust in the corner. Lucky for you. Stephen went back to the monitoring room, thinking that the man had finished his job and left. This light work really bored Stephen. Even though he had finished a cup of coffee, he still couldn't resist the sleepiness. So Stephen closed his eyes and fell asleep quickly. The first 4 nights had passed peacefully. And soon came the 5th night. Stephen continued his boring job, walking around the store, checking the electrical system and locking all of the doors. Then he returned to the security room and turned on the cameras one by one. Each area appeared in sequence on the screen. The cleaning staff in the arcade, restroom, play area, all silent at night.
You don't need to walk around. Just stay in the security room tonight.
Stephen suddenly was reminded of the manager's words. But he had been on duty for 4 nights in a row and didn't see anything dangerous. Stephen thought while clicking to view the camera. Oh, shoot! Stephen was startled when he saw Charles's face covering the entire screen. Who the hell did this? Stephen angrily went to check the dressing room. But when he got there, there was no one in the dressing room. All animatronics were gone. What the hell? Stephen returned to the stage to check, but there was nothing either.
Hi, player! Are you ready for the fun night?
Stephen, startled, looked around. Hey, this isn't funny at all, he shouted.
It's time for the hunt night!
The room turned red with the deafening alarm bells ringing. Stephen covered his ears. The sound hurt his head so badly. He quickly ran towards the door but was stopped by Charles the mouse, which held a bloody axe in its hand. Stephen panicked and ran off to the other side. The dark corridor was lit by the dim flashlights. Stephen ran in panic. The heavy footsteps with the evil laughter of Charles and the other mascots were right behind him. Ellen the chicken threw the axe but missed him. He kept running away. Stephen was now hiding in the dressing room among the dusty and furry mascots. He tried to breathe softly so those horrible things wouldn't find him. Heavy footsteps resounded in the air along with eerie laughter. Those creatures were very close, and they were hunting Stephen. The animatronic's attention was drawn to the wardrobe, so they slowly approached. There was no one inside. Stephen managed to escape the dressing room before the robots found him. He panicked and ran towards the exit, but it was locked. Damn it! Stephen ran to the security room again, but no matter how hard he tried, the door wouldn't open. No, 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 please God, no! Stephen muttered desperately. Stephen kept running away, but this time the robots blocked all the aisles. They came closer and closer. While panicked Stephen slowly stepped back, he suddenly hit something. That was Charles the mouse.
No! No!
The hunting night ended and a new day came. The mascots returned to the backstage, closing their eyes again as if nothing had happened.
It can get tiring to watch him go about his shenanigans in the pursuit of viral fame. Asking me to pick up things for him while he was traveling. To be honest, I was quite relieved since I didn't want to receive any more cheap view pranks from him. One evening I got home to find a big box waiting on his front porch. It was wrapped and glued very well along with the note, "Open the box right after you receive it." Damn it, I'm sure this is some kind of prank set up for me. I decided to drag the box over to my house to store it in the garage. I admit, I had trouble lifting the box on my own. It was really freaking heavy. I hadn't been to the garage for a long time, so I struggled for a while to pull it up. As I was trying my best to lift the box, I tripped over a ledge in the door. I lost my grip on the package and fell to the ground and heard a light crack inside. God, I hope I haven't broken anything important. That's okay. I can blame the carrier. That's what I thought. I dragged the box the rest of the way, setting it in the corner for days. Until a few days passed, there was a strong stench rose coming from the box from the garage that I couldn't ignore. He ordered raw meat to gradually roast the mukbang or something. I covered my nose as I approached the box with a pair of scissors in my hands. I probably wouldn't even have needed them to open it, as it had become soggy enough at the bottom to poke through with a finger. I also prepared dozens of plastic bags to handle the pile of meat. But in the end, it turned out that I didn't need all of that. There was meat inside, not beef or pork, but human flesh. No, it's worse than that. That's my neighbor lying in there. Then his flesh began to rot and decompose. I rushed out of the garage, unable to hold back the nausea that gushes out of my rectum. My body softened with fear. I still managed to call the police. It was kind of hard not to suspect the man with the corpse in its garage. After all, thankfully they soon realized I wasn't involved. There was one piece of irrefutable evidence in my neighbor's own hands that proved my innocence. A vlogging camera. They showed me the footage only once. Turns out my neighbor took on the challenge to resend himself from the shipping facility to his home. The last video on camera read, "Hey, what's up guys? I think I'm in a truck right now. I can feel it moving." On the last entry, the box toppled over. He broke his neck, and that was it. The camera continued to record until the power went out. There's one thing that I didn't tell the police. Just right before the tumble that leads to his death, I heard the familiar screeching sound. It's the sound of my garage door, slowly being pulled up.
Dan has been a big fan of Chuck E. Cheese ever since he was a child. He often watched horror stories on YouTube about Chuck E. Cheese chain stores. Sometimes those stories were told to be based on a true story. And of course, he was always curious to find out if those stories were true.
It's nice to be here late at night. When the machines are down and families are gone, you can get a Chuck E. Cheese token.
Dan stood in front of Chuck E. Cheese restaurant, looking at his phone with anticipation. He looked around carefully while forming in his head a plan to sneak in there at 3 a.m. In the YouTube video he was watching, there was a reference to the Chuck E. Cheese token. The video owner claimed that he found it in the management room thanks to an animatronic. So the plan was set. He must find an animatronic. After a while, Dan got to a dark hallway. He suddenly felt like someone was watching from behind. Turning around, Dan was startled to see the Chuck E. Cheese mascot standing there. It looked old and very strange with its round, fat body and dirty fur. Thinking it was the restaurant's staff, Dan cautiously took a step back. The mascot also stepped toward him without saying a word.
So weird,
Dan thought as he squinted at the moving creature. His heart was beating fast, and his mind was trying to come up with as many excuses as possible, just in case they caught him. And then, the mascot suddenly reached out with its hand toward Dan. Dan reflexively put his hand forward in self-defense, but the mascot had no intention of harming. Dan looked closely into the mascot's hand to see a red hard card with the Chuck E. Cheese logo in there. His eyes widened in surprise.
Don't play at the machines until after dark. Although it's definitely more fun at night, when everybody is already sleeping at home at 3 a.m.
It was true. The rumor in the videos was true. Dan looked at the card in the mascot's hand and took it after a moment's hesitation. Then, with great joy, he thanked the mascot and quickly left. Now Dan was standing in the front of the entrance and trying to figure out how to get in. His watch pointed exactly at 3 o'clock. The door suddenly opened, and the mascot, Chuck E. Cheese, appeared and waved for Dan to come in. He was so jittery, but decided to step inside. The inside of the store was pitch black. All the gaming machines were off.
Now then, how to start?
But the mascot disappeared before Dan finished his sentence. Dan felt a little scared, but he couldn't quit here. He turned on the flashlight and continued to go deeper. After he took a few more steps, suddenly the screen at the stage lit up to guide the way. His heart was pumping so fast. Finally, it was time to lift the veil about all of this mysterious stuff. He followed the instructions and reached the corridor shortly thereafter. At the end of the hallway was a huge door with a magnetic lock. Dan took out the red card previously given to him by the mascot and swiped it. The door opened.
Yes!
When he stepped through the door, a horrible odor broke out, causing Dan to immediately cover his nose. It was a large room full of gaming machines like the store outside. Those machines looked old with patchy stains and rust, but seemed to work fine. A faint whisper from the darkness startled Dan. He followed the sound. The nearer he got, the clearer the sound was. And when the 4 mascots appeared in the dark corner of the room, Dan was completely petrified. They looked very monstrous and creepy. On the costumes crisscrossed with stitches, the fur was thick, dirty, and messy. There were patches of exposed skin.
Please, help us.
Oh my God! They were all humans! And those were not normal mascot costumes, but real human skin. Someone had sewn patches of skin and fur on those bodies to make them the living mascots.
Let's butter up the pizza with a special butter sauce.
Dan felt a quiver down his spine. When he turned around, Charles the mascot came with a sharp knife in his hand. Dan fortunately dodged the slashes of the knife, but still suffered an injury to his hand. The mascot kept swinging the knife. Panicked, Dan rushed towards the door with all his strength before getting stabbed with the knife. He rushed out of the restaurant, heading forward without looking back. Luckily, He reached the police station before losing consciousness from blood loss. According to Dan's testimony, the police came to investigate the scene. They found the secret chamber and the victims that were turned into mascots. They were the investors who planned to replace the restaurant with a big hotel. The owner was arrested after that. He was the one that wore the mascot. He loved the restaurant insanely. The owner decided to kidnap and punish the investors after they threatened to destroy his restaurant. And of course, he was also the mastermind of the horror story in Chuck E. Cheese 3 a.m.
When two guys who owned the luxury dark channel posted a video about the dark web dating site, my group set up a challenge. Okay, since we're all single, the challenge will be to find a girlfriend on the dark web. Then, challenge accepted messages pop up. As someone who is used to the dark web, I certainly can't lose this challenge. That night, after I accessed a dating site on the dark web, I clicked to see a list of girls who are available. If you've watched the video of Luxury Dark, you can probably guess what kind of weirdos they are. Some people have severely burned bodies, some have wrinkled skin, weirdly messy hair, or even distorted parts. Among them, the blinking black-haired girl named Mia. She has a hobby of collecting dead insects, just like me. After a few days of texting back and forth, Mia asked for my home address, and I gave it to her. That very night, she came to my house. Mia wore a white ankle-length dress. She looked exactly like her avatar, with pitch black hair. What's strange was that she didn't wear anything on her feet.
Did you walk barefoot here?
Well, I took an Uber.
Mia replied nonchalantly, and just like that, I let her get in the house. That challenge, I officially won. But there is one thing my friends didn't know. I fell in love with Mia. It didn't take long for Mia and I to officially live together. Living in the same house with Mia is wonderful. Everything was great in the beginning. We get along really well, and we've never had more than a brief argument. But then she started humming. It's so dumb, I know, but she's always whistling this weird song, like the kind of tune you'd hear in a horror movie. At first, I would just hear her humming it when she was showering. Even though I tried to ignore it, I couldn't. It got stuck in my head and it drove me a little crazy, just like the time when Adele's Easy on Me first came out. You know the type. After a week or so, I asked her what the song was, and she just laughed. I'm wondering if maybe she came up with it on her own, especially when she started doing it more. One night while I was sleeping, I was woken up by that humming sound like a loudspeaker pounding right next to my ear. I thought I was dreaming, but no, I was wrong. I opened my eyes to see she was lying on her side, staring at me and humming that terrifying, scary song again.
Jesus Christ, you scared me to death!
In response, Mia remained silent, and suddenly she smiled. God, that smile didn't just stop at that grin, but it stretched and stretched until her lips reached her ears.
What the hell?
I shivered but couldn't move. Just like that, Mia, with her bloody mouth, bared her sharp teeth and came close to me. Just when I thought she was about to chew my head off, Mia stopped, returned to her senses, and went back to sleep like nothing happened. That night, I lay motionless in that position until morning, unable to close my eyes, and just kept my eyes on the ceiling. The next day, I came home late from work exhausted, partly because I couldn't sleep the night before. Mia was in the kitchen preparing food, and she just kept humming.
Crazy bitch!
I felt like I was blowing things out of proportion, but honestly, how hard is it to just not humming all the time? I told her to stop, but she just huffed and kept cooking.
What do you mean?
She said. It seemed that she wanted to start the fight. I lost my mind. I slapped Mia hard. Just then, she got freaked out. She told me she wasn't doing it and didn't know what my problem was. She called me crazy just because I was getting a little upset. And somehow that was all I could take. I grabbed one of the cast iron pans from the stove and swung it at her head as hard as I could. Mia fell over and smashed her head on the counter, falling to the ground. I think I hit her maybe 3 or 4 times. I don't remember, but I feel horrible. I couldn't believe I'd lost my temper like that, and I have no idea how I can fix this, regardless of how much she might have been provoking me. So if you ask me, never find the lovers on the dark web. But you know what the weird thing is? She's still freaking humming. 2 days have passed. Mia was still lying on the kitchen floor. The blood had dried. Her eyes were rolling back and her jaw was shattered into 100 pieces. But she didn't stop. I just need her to shut up. Just shut up. Shut up.
And she didn't have a raincoat either. If the rain hadn't stopped, maybe she would have to stay overnight at the store. But she didn't like that at all, because there was a rumor that this store was haunted.
Don't clean the dining room table at 12 o'clock because you might see them.
Baron, a day shift employee, warned Jade so.
Them?
The kids, Jade. Don't you know?
Baron shook his head. 10 years ago, there was a serial murder here, but the killer was never identified. The victims were 5 children. They were dismembered and stuffed in 5 mascots. From then on, their ghosts haunted this restaurant. When the clock pointed to 12, they would appear, started singing, dancing, even breaking furniture.
The corpse stuffed into Charles' mascot is the most mischievous and evil,
Baron suddenly emphasized, which gave Jade a sudden goosebump. However, she signed in the contract for the night shift work, so she couldn't break it.
As long as I don't get there at 12 o'clock, I'll be fine.
But things were out of her expectation. Now it was raining heavily and she was stuck at the restaurant. The worst thing was the weak electrical system here, which made it even more gloomy. She tried to get the story Baron had told that morning out of her mind. The silence inside gave her a minor goosebump. Taking a deep breath, Jade took the mop to the dining table. The strange noise from the stage startled Jade, but when she turned around, there was nothing but 5 animatronics standing motionless on stage. Jade continued to pile chairs on the table. The hum that echoed through the air made Jade shiver. It was the song Out of This World that the animatronics band always performed. Jade looked at the animatronics on stage and assumed they were faulty, so she decided to check them. Jade slowly moved towards Charles the mouse. It stood there motionless with a smile while the humming still resounded.
Ball control to all my friends.
Charles suddenly bellowed out a loud, raspy sound like it was faulty. Its whole body began to convulse with the arms flailing wildly. Its mouth moved, and its eyes blinked rapidly, and the verse it was singing kept repeating over and over, growing louder and louder. Jade had to cover her ears because of the strange squealing. She panicked and staggered out of the dining table. Jade sat at the counter. She was panting, and her limbs were still shaking from the unexpected encounter. The restaurant was really haunted. She took out her phone and texted her manager to ask for a shift change. But it was almost midnight. He was probably sleeping. On the outside, it was still pouring down, but Jade decided to leave. She quickly put all her things in the backpack. Jade sped up. The more panicked she got, the more quickly she did. She no longer had the courage to go check the electrical system. just using the flashlight on her cell phone to shine the way. After getting out of the counter, she found large footprints on the floor. Its color resembles blood. Those footprints extend from the dining table to the cashier counter. Jade was so scared that her legs were shaking, and she stepped back. Her back just hit something. She slowly rolled her eyes up. Mouse Charles's head gradually appeared from the darkness. It was smiling, and from there, a few drops of liquid splashed on Jade's face. She raised her hands to touch the liquid. Oh my God, that was blood! Jade screamed in fear. She tried to run out of the damn restaurant as fast as she could. The truck was approaching when Jade rushed across the road. The driver couldn't brake in time and crashed into her. Jade was lying under the front of the car, her head and face all crushed, her bones and joints broken. Blood gushed out from her mouth, mixing with the torrential rain. The driver called an ambulance while Jade was dying in pain. Inside the dark corner of the store, Baron and Mascot Charles is dazed, his limbs shaking with fear. He just wanted to have a little prank.
It's been so long since I felt this good. Gonna blast out from my neighborhood.
A few years ago, I was in a bad place. My guardian had kicked me out after graduation. I was so worried since I couldn't afford a place to stay at the time. A friend noticed and offered a place for me, since he has an empty room at home. I agreed. Looking back now, I wish I had just stayed in the street. He is a lovable guy, so his friends come to hang out often. Over time, they started to stay with us for longer periods of time, sometimes weeks. His friends were another group of brothers named Joe and Will. The big brother, Joe, is such a nice guy, while the younger one, Will, had a list of mental problems. He believed in the occult and anything of that sort. He would often look me in the eyes and tell me he could see how I would die. Once he even told me that I was possessed by a demon and I needed my soul cleansed. I never really believed in that stuff. Obviously, I was always looking over my shoulder and locking the door of my room. However, I forgot once. It was the day I had my night shift. I was so exhausted that I went to bed right after I got home. About 2 hours later, I suddenly felt something wet on my face. I tried to ignore it and convinced myself it was just a dream. After a while, I felt the wind blowing strongly against my face from nowhere. Feeling itchy, I opened my eyes to check time. The view made me tremble inside. It was Will. He was putting his face very close to mine, his face going wild and crazy. Turns out what I thought was a dream earlier was his drool and breath. I jumped up and pushed him hard. "What the hell is wrong with you?" His body shook like crazy. He couldn't stop muttering, "Demon, demon, demon." The next morning, I told everyone about that. They all knew he had these problems, but he was their friend. They helped him through the hard times and gave him a place to stay. Otherwise, he would be on the streets. I was always on guard around him after the things did to me. No one else seemed to be as concerned as I was. They should have been. One day I was sleeping and my phone rang. It was my boss. He asked if I could come into work an hour early. It was only 12 p.m. I was broke and needed to save money to get out of this house as soon as possible, so I said yes. I walked out into the living room to see my friend Joe sitting on the couch, while Will sat on the floor by the TV. I said goodbye and left for work. It was 5 p.m. when my shift at work was almost complete. When I was about to leave, a policeman approached me. "Hi, this is the police. Something happened at your apartment today and We need your support. I had assumed one of the brothers had been arrested for something illegal, but I was very wrong. The officer then informed me that Will had stabbed and killed his brother and my friend at around 1 p.m. I was shocked. I had just left the house an hour before it happened, and everything seemed fine. Our apartment was a crime scene, so I went to another friend's house to watch the news reports since the police wouldn't give me any information on the case. Over the next couple of days, the information began to be released. Will hadn't just stabbed Joe once, not twice, but over and over, and nearly decapitated the bodies. And my poor friend, he tried so hard to escape from that manic, but unluckily, was bleeding to death. Will was caught hiding in the bushes near where I worked. I watched the news report in horror. We had known he was unstable, but this? He hadn't confessed anything, but the police found his notebooks. He thought we were possessed by demons, and this was the only way to free us. And my name? It is put in the last, except...
Not a good person.
Nick knows we can't trust people, but this time, he insists.
So what? At least you and I don't have to eat the trash.
Then, he walked away with a man named Alex. If only Nick could see the monstrous smile on that man's face before he left. Mr. Alex has brought me money like he promised. I don't know how much money Nick made, but a month later, I had an apartment to stay in. I even had enough money to buy a laptop and an old phone. At first, Nick and I couldn't meet in person, but we still talked on the phone.
You know what? I've never eaten that much food in my life. I'll send you the link to watch me on YouTube.
I clicked on the link. Then, on the screen appeared about a dozen videos of Nick sitting in front of a mountain of food. All are fast food, spicy noodles, and sweets.
I thought you only ate things like vegetables and fruits.
In response, Nick said,
Yeah, but audiences don't want to see boring stuff like that. Besides, fast food is delicious as well.
After a few months, Nick appeared more regularly on YouTube with the new title,
The New King of Mukbang!
Gradually, he changed so drastically that I no longer recognized him. My old Nick was calm and gentle, but this one is so rude, not mentioning he gained tons of weight.
Oh my god, how come Nick turns into this person? What happened to him?
As more and more videos are uploaded, less phone calls are made. Until one day, it's impossible for me to reach him. It's been a week since the last time we talked, so I am extremely worried. Since Alex refused to say a word, I decided to follow him. The plan worked. I was led to a large warehouse. I came in to see many small rooms, all of which are dark. However, there was still one room that had the light on. It was the same room Alex had just entered. I moved as quietly as possible and sneaked a peek inside. The things I saw in that room make me shiver every time I think about it. There was a man wearing a red shirt that I didn't even recognize. That man was so overweight that I can't imagine how he could walk. He was tied to a large iron rod. Blood and brown liquid was all over his body.
Let me go! Let me go! You cannot do this to people!
Just then, Alex appeared. In his hand were a lot of pills. He put the whole bunch in that man's mouth and forced him to swallow them all. Only then, when I could look closely at the details of the face, I realized it was Nick. Although his face was much different from before, those eyes, lips, were unmistakable.
For God's sake, take these pills! You have another video to shoot in 2 hours.
Nick threw up both in the mouth and in his bottom. He struggled, howling in the slime and smelling terrible. I was trembling inside. My hand shook so hard that I could barely hold the phone. But still, I tried to record the scene because I know no one would believe me without the proof. Just then, Alex spotted my presence.
I don't clearly remember what happened after that. I ran like crazy and somehow I magically escaped from that warehouse. Of course, I reported it to the police. But even with the evidence I had, they still wouldn't believe me because I was just homeless after all. But you guys can. I believe that. And here's the video I took that day. Please bring justice back to Nick. Please, let me go. If you don't shoot that video, you and that girl will be back to your garbage.
Harry, and I work at an old gas station in the suburb. That place is quite empty and has only a few visitors come by. I work the night shift with a girl called Laura. One night I went to work as usual, but that night I witnessed a terrifying incident that I would never forget.
Hey, take this outside and stick it on the board for me.
Laura stood at the cashier, and as soon as she saw me, she handed me a new price tag. Gasoline price has increased again. Just last week, it was only $2 a gallon. Now it's $5. Laura complained that this old damn gas station had already been solitude enough, and now thanks to the price increase, it will be closed soon. Calm down, it's the same everywhere now, I comforted her. The black SUV stopped at the station. Then a tall man with fierce eyes got out of the car. He was dressed sloppily, looked a little dirty and messy with loose hair, and looked like a tramp. He looked so poor. How could he afford an SUV? That was odd.
"Fill up the gas tank,"
he said, reaching into his pocket to pull out some change. He looked up at the price tag and then at the crumpled bundle of money in his hand, noticing that he didn't have enough money. These coins weren't even enough for a gallon.
"Damn it,"
he growled, and turned back in the car and rummaged around. Then he turned to me again.
"Pay you later,"
he said, and went inside the store. My dream car. I loved the black SUV, wishing I could touch it once, and so I put out my hand.
"Hey, what the heck are you doing?"
The man shouted with a glaring face and rushed to push me away. "I'm sorry." I bowed my head. At this moment, gasoline in the tank began to overflow, splattering on the ground. I could even smell it. "Sir, you forgot to pay!" I rushed to the front of the car, but the man didn't listen. He still started it. I had no choice but to poke my head inside the car to stop him. Gosh, something wafted up that got me dizzy. The car was filled with black plastic bags and messy clothes. He braked the car, angrily pushed the door, causing me to fall. He jumped out and kicked me in the dust. I writhed in pain and dodged.
"You bastard! Do you want to die?"
After hitting me, he grabbed my collar. "Sir!" I stammered, trembling.
"God damn it! Do I have to kill you too?"
He screamed, his eyes bloodshot and ferocious, his mouth wide open menacingly. Fortunately, Laura ran to us, threatened to call the police, only to make him let go of me. He was still driving furiously, and yet didn't pay a dime for the gasoline.
Are you okay?
Laura worriedly helped me up. My whole body was dirty. My clothes were rumpled. My hands and feet were shaking. Laura quickly comforted me and told me to go inside and change my clothes. I stood up, but still not fully recovered from fear. While raising my eyes to watch the car go away, I noticed something laying on the road, apparently from the other man's car. I narrowed my eyes and stepped closer.
Ah!
I screamed in horror when I discovered that it was a severed arm. Gosh, that arm was pale. The cut was still bloody with a little white bone. I was so scared that I fell to the ground. Lara heard the scream and ran over, saw the thing on the ground, and threw up right at the place. From the distance came the signal of the car. Thought it was the man coming back. I immediately pulled Lara into the store and tried to lock the door. The car came, slowly stopped outside the gas station. I looked up daringly, peeking through the window. The fierce man from earlier came back. He stopped the car right near the severed arm, got out, looked around, then picked up the hand and put it in the trunk. Then he suddenly returned to the shop, which made me stiff. Lara hastily pulled me down to hide. I could hear his footsteps approaching. The door-knocking sound scared us to death, but we still had to cover our mouths to stop ourselves from making a sound while the door was about to burst open.
I will find you, gas station bastard!
He growled to threaten us. I heard footsteps, followed by the sound of a car engine fading away. After the man had actually left, Lara decided to dial 911. Based on our testimony and the camera footage, the police identified a man named Eric. After killing his girlfriend, he sawed up her body and threw the body parts and her belongings in the trunk to dump them away. No one suspected him on the way until he drove past the gas station and dropped the arm from his trunk.
I will find you!
Hi everyone, it's Alexa, and this is my daily makeup look. Do you like the Hooters work uniform? If so, let me know in the comments.
I have to admit, I'm lucky enough to have a good look. Thanks to this body, I can work at Hooters while making videos on TikTok to pay for my studies and daily expenses. As usual, I arrived at the Hooters restaurant at 16:30 to prepare for my shift. Recently, the media has been reporting on the unexplained disappearances of Hooters girls. Therefore, I avoid working the night shift for the sake of my safety. However, it's Saturday night and there's a girl off unexpectedly, so I have to take her place.
Come on, Alexa, cheer up. Let's get $1,000 tonight.
I talk to myself and start my work. I was so busy that I forgot about the missings. I run back and forth to write orders, carry things, clean, and sometimes even take photos with customers. Saturday night, huh? A beer for me, please. For your information, in Hooters, polite men who simply want to enjoy a drink like this are extremely rare. He introduces himself as Adam. I'm used to being stared at every part of my body, but today the man sitting in the corner made me extremely uncomfortable. It's been half an hour, but he hasn't ordered anything. I happily pour beer for Adam and walk over to the old man's table while his eyes stuck on my chest.
Sir?
It's an old man about 50 years old. He wears filthy clothes and has a perverted look in his eyes. Even worse, he couldn't even close his mouth, drooling profusely while his eyes stuck on my chest.
Sir?
I call a few times, but he doesn't answer. Instead, his eyes keep staring at me as if he wants to eat me alive. Annoyed, I give up and go back to my counter. I know I should tell my manager, but first I have to stream a video on TikTok as promised.
Hello guys, as promised, let's count the tips with me.
The thick pile of money makes me feel a bit better.
Okay, first $100 from a handsome guy sitting right across from the bar. Another $50 bill at table 3, another $50. Only $10 from table 8. Can you believe it? Why is that man so cheap? But that's not the worst bad luck in the evening.
Then I turned the phone to the corner of the shop where the old man was sitting.
Guys, he's been sitting here for an hour and hasn't ordered anything. He's just staring at me. If you don't have money, then don't go to a restaurant.
As soon as I finish speaking, comments pop up. My followers are so kind. I get startled when I make eye contact with him. I hurriedly put my phone away and pretend nothing happened. Even from a distance, I could clearly see the anger on his face. Is that really the kidnapper on TV? No wonder why he is angry when I film him like that.
God, I have to tell the manager.
Hey, is something wrong? My thoughts are interrupted by Adam, the handsome guy, but my mind and attention are on the old man in the corner of the shop. In the distance, I see him slowly getting up and walking towards me. My heart rate increases with each step he takes.
Sir, how can I help you?
I try to keep myself calm and professional.
You rat! How dare you film me?
He slapped me, hard. My whole body trembles with pain and fear, but he doesn't care. Right after that, he grabs my neck and screams,
Where is that video? Delete it! Delete it!
Another punch lands on me, then 2, 3 more. Due to the shock, I can't even open my mouth to cry for help. My whole body gets numb and bleeding. Everyone gets up to film the scuffle, but no one stops the old man. Another fist is being raised, and I can do nothing but close my eyes. But a few seconds later, nothing happens.
What are you doing? Let me go!
Slowly opening my eyes, I see the old man being held by Adam. And like a hero, he pushes the old man to the floor. And that really works. He quickly runs away after throwing out a sentence that makes me shiver.
Don't let me catch you.
Because of the shuffle, the Hooters restaurant is closed earlier than usual. For fear of the perverted old man stalking me, Adam suggests that I should not go home alone. When the car has been running for a while, I ask him,
Do you have any plans for tonight?
What do you mean? Adam asks thoughtfully. I replied,
Oh, I mean, what are you going to do after taking me home?
But then, the smile on Adam's face changes. Who says I will take you home? I also think Adam has a crush on me, but I don't think he intends to go that far. But then, Adam seems angry and breaks the silence. Damn, old man, you hurt my goods! He then turns around with a sinister smile. But don't worry, after I kill you, I will clean you to bring back the good looking.
My neck. I felt like dozens of eyes were staring at me from behind. I turned around and got jump scared. At the end of the corridor, and not only 1, 2, but dozens of mannequins lined up. Jessie giggled.
You're not used to these things? Take your time, and you'll love it.
Her expression made me feel embarrassed. Was the let the light off situation earlier also her joke? I thought. Then I was led down the hallway and stopped in front of an old door.
So this is your room. I hope you like it.
As soon as I entered the room, I felt extremely excited. Not only did Jessie keep the room clean, but she also set up a few mannequins in the corner to help me practice. Oh, Jessie, I don't know how to thank you enough. After chit-chatting for the whole night, I went to bed at around 11 o'clock. When I was dozing off, I suddenly heard the melodious music echoing back, seemingly coming from the first floor. Didn't Jessie say this place is so quiet? Why is there music at 2 a.m.? Unable to fall back asleep, I followed the music and was led down to the dining room. What the hell is this? As soon as I walked down the hall, I was horrified to see Jessie holding a mannequin and dancing passionately. I couldn't see it clearly, but in the dim chandelier light, I could see a mannequin's arm hanging loosely and being swayed by Jessie. I moved closer, intending to call out, but just then I froze. It's not a mannequin, but a human. Jessie's dancing with the torso of a corpse. Panic surges through me. My body shook with fear. I have to get out of here immediately. But when I was about to run, I accidentally tripped on something soft. Immediately, a fishy smell hit my nose, straight to my brain. I realized my hands were smeared in mucus. You must be kidding me. In the darkness, I noticed 2 or 3 other mannequins lying around beside me. Well, they're not. Oh my gosh, they are definitely not mannequins. They are human corpses. I was falling to the pile of corpses. Suddenly, my mind went blank, and everything quickly blurred in front of my eyes. Before I lost consciousness, I could still hear Jesse's voice say,
Say hello to your new friends.
God, I hope this bus never stops.
It was Sunday night, but I still had to go to work. Forgot to mention, I work part-time at a Chuck E. Cheese. I know what you were thinking.
Working at Chuck E. Cheese is a dream job. Having fun with the kids is nothing to complain about.
Wow. Calm down. Hear me up and I'll prove you wrong. Mr. Brooks, the Chuck E. Cheese owner, is now my boss. Ever since I was a kid, I've always thought he was the most caring soul that spends his whole life working for children. Turns out, he's the most inhospitable one. Luckily, I'm just an apprentice, so I don't have to talk to him much. I often caught him standing in a corner, silently observing the whole thing. Not to mention, the work is always overloaded. There was always just me, Mr. Brooks' assistant, and Zane, the employee wearing a dirty old mascot suit.
What are you looking at? You're not paid standing there.
I did not have a moment's rest, but I was no doubt lucky enough to not be forced to wear the costume. For so long, I never even saw the man beneath the mascot. Zane has to talk to children and dance for them all day. What's worse, he was always under the supervision of Mr. Brooks. It's rare for children to laugh so happily these days. Maybe he comes up with something interesting. So I turned around to check it out.
What the hell?
Zane was on stage and staggered like he's drunk. He fell, then got up again, and then fell again. It goes on and on in the crunchy laughter of the children. The mascot shoes were so old and dirty. I froze when watching the thin red line stream down the face of the children's icon.
How could this be committed?
Since I fear the assistant can sense the lost productivity, I went about my business.
You're wearing a mascot today. Zane took an unscheduled break for no reason. And don't let Mr. Brooks know. He gets mad whenever Zane is absent.
When I was on the bus, I got a new message from the manager. What a tiring day, I sighed. Following his instructions, I arrived at the store early and entered the changing room of the other co-worker. The mascot is hanging right there. I took it down and put it on.
Jesus, doesn't anyone wash this thing?
I've never smelled something so rotten. The inside of the mascot was filthy and sticky. I'm sure it was sweat and all sorts of dirt coming from that coworker. Soon, the children arrived. I wasn't used to the job, so I just stood there bouncing around on stage and letting kids laugh at me.
Thank God it's over. Hope Zane will show up tomorrow.
Around 10 p.m., I turned back to the room to put the mascot off. But before I could do anything, a voice behind me made me startled.
Why don't you come and serve me during the break like you were told yesterday?
It's Mr. Brooks. Because I don't get it. I just stand there and hold my breath. I didn't even turn to face him for fear of being revealed. But the silence did not last long.
Tomorrow is your last chance. If you want to save your sister, you must obey me until the end.
What does that mean? When I digested his words, my fear spiked.
By the way, I didn't know you could still perform after all of your toes were chopped off.
And then, the laughter fades away when Mr. Brooks leaves the room. I then quickly stripped off the disgusting mascot and rushed to the bus stop to go home. That was the last time I showed up at Chuck E. Cheese. Mr. Brooks was in jail now, and Zane, the other employee, was nowhere to be found. To be honest, I really hope Zane and his sister are doing well.